Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for June 2nd. I would ask that all of you make sure your phones are on silent or vibrate so that we can proceed with the meeting without interruption. First item on the agenda today is roll call.
Wessam?
Here.
Kohler?
Here.
Dancer? Here. Olson?
Here.
Pittner?
Here.
Samuelson?
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the mayor's report. In addition to attending all the regularly scheduled meetings and so forth, I had two opportunities that I want to chat about just for a second. Last Tuesday, I spent the day with Colonel Jimmy Schleybaugh and the 91st leadership from out at Minot Air Force Base, along with Chairman Mark Fox down on the Fort Berthold reservation, and we toured Hotel 1, which is the missile alert facility that is on the road leading from east to west into Newtown Highway 23 there. Was a great opportunity to visit with the folks from the three affiliated tribes, MHA Nation, as well as the folks from 91st Missile Wing. So that was a really nice day. And then secondly, on Thursday last week, I attended the NAWS Authority Board, which was held down at the biota treatment plant that's under construction in Max. And so if you're headed south on 83, if you look over to the east at Max, you'll see a large building there that wasn't there a few years ago, and that is the biota treatment plant. When completed, that will be processing the water that will come from Lake Sakakawea to supply NAWS and about 81,000 people in northwestern North Dakota with water. After the meeting, we also went down to the Snake Creek Pumping Station, which is the facility on the west side of the between Audubon and Lake Sakakawea. And it's kind of nondescript looking when you pass from the highway, but when you get into that facility, it goes down about 150 feet below the surface of the lake, and that's where we'll be drawing water from, and where they pump water to regulate the depth of Lake Audubon as the year progresses. So two very, very important engagements and facilities. And one more thing by way of my report, if you haven't early voted yet in the park board election, voting is tomorrow. Please go out and cast your vote. Any questions of me? That concludes my report. We will move on to section 4, which is 4.1, City Manager's Report. Harold?
Good evening, Acting Mayor Janser and members of the council and the community. As always, the city manager report is included in the packet. I did want to highlight one in case the public hasn't read. There may be some expectations with regards to a recommendation for police chief tonight, as is outlined in the memo. I'm still waiting for some further information with regards to background checks and references, and so I have not yet made a decision on recommendation, but I do plan to do that at the next city council meeting, just so that's there. Also, a reminder that we have the second round of our community engagement meetings starting next week. So the first one will be next Monday, June 9th at 5:30. It'll be held at the Magic City Campus High School. The topic on that will be road construction, giving an update on all of our road construction projects this season. I assume most of the public is pretty aware of where we're doing construction, but it will be done in different phases throughout the year, and that's a good opportunity to come and get some more information, ask some questions, and provide staff some feedback. And then next Thursday, June 12th, there will be another one. That one will be with regards to water main replacement, and that will be at the Learning Tree at 5:30 p.m. as well. And then the last week of June will be the other two. First one being on June 23rd. That will be at the Transit Center, and the topic on that will be our transit system. And then June 26th will be the final one for this group of meetings. Subject matter on that will be with regards to municipal court, and that will be held at the municipal court building on that day. That's my report. I'd stand for any questions the council may have on either the memo or any other matters for the city manager.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on. City Attorney, your report.
Mayor, members of the council, I submitted a written report that I can stand for any questions. One thing I'll highlight is we have had a staff change in our office. We gathered here a couple of Fridays ago to wish goodwill to Nancy Horst after almost 10 years with the city. She started around the same time as I did, so I'm still in a state of mourning over losing Nancy, but we've been able to welcome a wonderful new legal assistant in our office. Her name is Rebecca Whithouse. So if you have a chance to stop by and welcome her to the city attorney's office, she'd love to meet all of you, and I can stand for any questions about the report at this time too.
Okay, seeing no questions, we will move on. That brings us to item 5, which is consent items. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, just, I'd like to pull 510. I apologize. Normally, I would have done that before, but I just realized there's something I want to ask there.
5.10.
Thank you.
Approval on the remaining items.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, that leaves us in that section with 5.10. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Alderman Blessam.
Yeah, so just to the city attorney, I just want to make sure that we clarify this because we did get some information back from a homeowner. Just want to make sure that that we're clear with the public about what the process ought to be. And I guess for my colleagues, if there's anything we think we need to adjust. Because I think, I think hopefully this was an isolated case where they didn't feel that they were communicated to. But if there is something to that, I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about it if we need to.
Certainly. Mayor, if I may, and Alderman Blessam, I'm going to plug into Dias 7 and I'm going to share a excerpt from the land development ordinance for the city of Minot. And so what I'm going to show you is section 9.1-7, which pertains to zoning map amendments, and that's referenced to in this letter that was provided to the council. This is a letter that was provided to the property owners to give them notice of this particular application that was moving through the planning commission. There's a front and a back side that kind of illustrates the neighborhood that this is in, and this is the neighborhood that's near Edison School. So under 9.1-7, the zoning map amendments, it talks about A, B, and C. We're kind of past all of that, where it talks about a voluntary pre-application meeting with the applicant here. This situation, it's Our Lady of Grace Church. The application submittals in C. The application is reviewed by the Planning Commission. It proceeds to the Planning Commission for a hearing and a recommendation to the council. And then it proceeds here in pertinent part to the council to for first reading on the ordinance, and we're past that. So the council action was to approve the application for a rezone on a first reading. That has happened, but a second reading is required to finalize the decision, and that's because it's an ordinance change. So that's where we're at today, which brings us to section G, the city council's second reading. So here, the city council is to make a final motion to approve or deny the application for a zoning map amendment or postpone the decision to allow for further review. The requirement for approval here, when a quorum is present, which there is, a simple majority vote is sufficient of those present. So still 4, despite the vacancy, still 4 out of 7 members need to vote to approve the application. The review and approval criteria is found in paragraph H, and it's outlined as well in the written report that's provided in the agenda. And then there is an option here for a written protest. And to my knowledge, I'd have to confirm with planning staff, there's been no written protest that fits this ordinance that has been received. What that requires is prior to second reading, so prior to today, a protest petition has to be submitted to the planning division stating the names, signatures, and addresses of the protesting property owners, including signatures by at least 20% of the property owners within the notice area detailed in section 9.2-1 subsection C. Any owner of the property within the petition area described herein can submit a petition except for the city of Minot. And if that is received, then a supermajority vote is required. So as present, it stands before you as from my understanding with the planning division, this was noticed the same way any other zoning change request would be done. It's a form letter that goes out from the planning division, so they change the information relevant to the property owners. They send it out to the designated notice area, and that's the notice that's given, along with the other notice that appears in the regular city council agendas that are given to everybody. So that's as it presently sits here before you today on second reading. Simple majority is sufficient to approve the item, or if you want to defer for further review, we can do that. We would just need direction on what additional review would be required.
Alderman Blessam.
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, I remember this from January. We went through our part of the process. It's been through the planning process. It was noticed for the city council meeting at that time. It was noticed for this meeting again. We've hit every step along the way. I don't know that, short of a petition that would have been brought, that there's anything further that we need to do. So I'm satisfied. I don't have any worries with that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's time to vote. Please cast your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, moving on. That brings us to section 6, which is action items. Item 6.1 is the adoption of the fund balance policy. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson,
I'll second.
Alderman Samuelson. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, could we have Dave just come and kind of walk us through where we're headed?
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. This is the first stab at updating the fund balance policy. This is a result of a request that was brought by the council. I think you may be aware that in ordinance, currently the city is required to maintain a 1/12 reserve in the funds based on the subsequent year's operating budget. And a number of years back, that was adjusted to, to instead of being a 1/12 reserve, it was a 3/12 reserve. And we've adjusted that a little bit to kind of get aligned more with best practices. GFOA has adjusted slightly their recommendation as well. It used to be a 30% of the largest operating fund, which is our general fund. And now they've stepped that back a little bit too. So we've adjusted the fund balance policy to kind of incorporate that. And in the general fund in particular, we've proposed a range for the fund balance to give us some leeway. And one thing I want to point out is that fund balance addresses unrestricted fund balance. Now that is different than cash because you can have funds that are restricted by law or covenants with bonds and some of those things where they may not be in spendable form. So there's some reasons why that wouldn't be included in unrestricted fund balance. The other thing is some of those funds can be unrestricted, but they are already committed for a specific purpose. We may be under a contract, we just haven't expended the funds, or they may be assigned for something coming forward. So that's kind of been the policy in the past where we have saved up funds because we knew we had a large expenditure coming forward. So we would save up some money in a few years and then have that expenditure at the end of that term. So unrestricted funds still includes those funds that are committed and assigned. So that's why we propose a range. So when we're doing our planning, and I will use the police department remodel, the building remodel as a prime example for that. We know that that is a significant price tag that is a year or two into the future. So our practice would be to save that money up ahead of time. So in that case, knowing that we have that large expenditure, that fund balance would probably grow the next couple of years. And then once that project takes place, then it drops down. So that's why we propose a range.
Alderman Blessam.
Okay, Dave, I think I was the main person asking for this, so I might have a series of things to talk through here. So a couple things I noticed as I was looking through the policy, the proposed language. Number one, it flips it from prior year to future year, correct? So when we're looking at whether it's 30%, 75%, it's now in the policy looking forward at the coming budget. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, that is correct. And typically when we're looking at this it's year-end fund balance. So at that point, we generally have the subsequent year budget already. And I think the idea is going backwards to determine what our reserve policy is not very effective. So if we know that we anticipate spending $1 million in that fund next year, we'd want our reserve based on what we anticipate our expenses to be.
Okay. So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, I think that makes sense. Okay, so then as I look back, I just want to start to think about how this is going to get applied. So as I look back at the slide that I think Harold presented and we've seen multiple times with the reserves, as we exited in this case 23, because we're looking back that far, we had nothing in my mind that would have been restricted. If there is, it wasn't on the graph. Maybe there's some sliver, but there was nothing restricted in the definition that you're using here. Is that correct? Because we have committed / current projects, but even that I don't think is truly restricted. That would be something that's tied to a federal requirement or a state requirement or something that has really restricted that. I'm talking in the general fund now.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, and I don't have that information with me. I should have brought it up, but I think just about every fund has restricted funds in it, and that's because it's imposed either by an outside source such as a bond covenant. It can also be imposed by law or statute. So an example might be sales tax funds that are only able to be used for a specific purpose. They would be considered restricted because we can't use that money for anything else. So that would be an example of that. Federal dollars is exactly the same thing. It's usually a grant for a specific purpose. We can only use that money for that purpose. We can't use it for any other.
Yeah, so if I can continue. So as an example, if we're going after a fire department grant, I believe right now, right? That's meant to fund some extra firefighters. If we were to get that, that would then become restricted because it's got to be used for that purpose. It's got to fit exactly. It may be sitting in the general fund because that's how those positions are funded, but it's going to be a restricted use.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, and not to further confuse this issue, but usually those are reimbursement type grants, so we don't have that money sitting in the fund, so it wouldn't become restricted at that point either. So, I mean, that just is a nuance that further complicates the issue, but in some cases, we may have funding that is given to us for, like I said, a very limited set of circumstances, and that's why it would be restricted.
Okay, and so if I can continue, so now so with that in mind, there may be some pieces there. As I look at the graph now that I was looking at, in the water sewer storm, we do have some bond covenants in there that are in that color. I'm looking at the general fund and I don't see those. And so I want to make sure that we're all kind of getting our minds around this now. So if we're talking about the general fund, we're talking about doing a 30% to a 75%, 75%, which is capped by law, right? So we really can't do anything different there regardless. 30% on the low end, which I'm in support of. I think that makes sense. I think that's the place for me to be conservative is let's not do one. Let's not hang our hat on 1 month's reserves. Let's operate, say, in the 3, I might have a different number for the upper end, but that's kind of where we would be. So as we transition into that, where it starts to get really complicated for me, again, the general fund makes a lot of sense, the idea here is to apply this to the others though as well, right? So as we apply that to other funds, do you have other heartburn about how that actually lays out? Because the state law requirement only applies to the general fund. So what happens in those other funds that we have to be careful of? And do we need a table of policy? Because as an example, our NAS fund may need to be completely handled differently than our general fund.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, you're exactly correct. And when we start looking at our proprietary funds, it becomes a lot more difficult because they vary so much in size and complexity and some of the projects that they have. So it's a lot more difficult to have a cookie cutter type of policy. So I'm thinking that the direction we would take would be more of a range there as well, depending on the size of the fund. And I'll pick on water as an example with some of the deferred maintenance that we have with water main replacements. We know that we have a lot of capital expenditures in the future. So we may want to accumulate additional funds knowing that we have that upcoming expense. We wouldn't want to impose that same reserve policy on the remainder of them that aren't anticipating that amount of cash outlay in the future. So I think the concept is to find that comfort level where if there's a sudden downturn in revenues or an unanticipated expense, that we can weather that without having to come back and scramble for a funding source to cover it. Enterprise funds, we have the ability to control that and operate it more like a business. In the general fund or the governmental funds, we're a lot more limited on how we can raise revenue.
Right. And to continue, so, the way that I always think of that is that the amount we charge the public in property tax is the last step in the process. We figure out everything else that leads up to that point, and at the very end, we say, okay, now we're short this much. We need to go ask the people for that amount, or impose that amount, I guess is a better way to put it right now. So, with that in mind, this gets really complicated in my mind because I can see this clearly for where my mind goes for the general fund, but I guess I'm less certain how the rest lay out, and that's where I think we need to rely on staff to give us that guidance. And I guess the other question is, let me go to here. We had a discussion last week on the VERF and how that's going to work, and it's now another set of dollars we're going to be setting aside through the different departments and through their budgets, which again all trickle back to the people eventually, that are setting aside now cash for vehicle replacement over time. I mean, that's the easiest way to think of it right now. And one of the concerns I expressed during that discussion was that we're creating another pile of money for a specific purpose that now, in this case, needs its own set of parameters and its own set of requirements on it, because this should really release some of the need in the general fund, but it's real easy in my mind to have both of them inching up and at a layer at a level that is really too much for the taxpayers to be dealing with. So I guess from my perspective, the policy we have in front of us, there's an adjustment that I would want to make to it right away, but that's only thinking of the general fund. I feel like we need another layer of detail in it, because I don't know that I can support it even as it is, because I don't know how that would apply to all the rest.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, I think the concept is that this would be incorporated into the budget process as well, so that it's more transparent what we are carrying for reserves or unrestricted balances in each of the funds. So that would be something that I think would be on us to point out, and it would be part of the budget process then too. And that's why it's key for us to have a longer time horizon in our planning process. Instead of looking ahead to just next year, we have to be looking 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years out in some cases to plan for that, because we can't wait until the year before at budget time and have a huge project and not have the funding available for it. And with some of the other stresses that we have with flood control and some of these other projects, we're in essence reserving a lot of our our borrowing capacity to fund these large projects. And we can't, it's just like if you want to buy a house, you can't go buy the car and the camper and the boat and everything else and still expect to pay for the house too. So we've had to make our priorities and essentially live within our budget. And the flood control and those capital projects are a priority. We've got preferential rates on funding from the state. That's our avenue that we've taken to fund those. We have to figure out how to pay for some of this other stuff as we go, because we just can't go out and issue debt to make it happen.
So to continue, so Dave, what we've got in front of us puts a minimum and a maximum on the general fund. And that's the focus of what's here today. It doesn't mean we couldn't continue to adjust as we learn more, but that is what is in front of us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'm good with Dave for now. If there's other questions until discussion.
Any other questions for the finance director? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman Blessing?
Okay, so if I can continue. So again, I guess this is a big deal to me as I brought it out the back end of last year's budget process, because while these are important planning tools, this is also how we take more of the people's money than I really think that we should. One great example of how that happens is that we set a budget and then our staff do a fabulous job throughout the year of saving where they can and spending less than the budget intended, which is fabulous news, right? As I've said before, in a business, that's your profit. That's how you make money. In a government, we're not here to make money, we're here to break even and provide the best service we can at break even. When we have those extra funds, they stay in our reserves and they're set aside because we've already charged the public for it. We've already asked them for the money at budget time. And so that's why, to me, it's important that we pull back on what these reserves look like, keeping in mind, again, if you remember, during the budget process, I pointed out that we were actually over what Century Code allowed us. The finance team has done a nice job of rectifying that and making sure that we're on the right side of that. But I think we need to take a step further. And so, Mr. Mayor, my amendment to the proposed structure is that instead of having that at 75% on the top end, that we keep that banded between 30% and 50% of the general fund.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion of the amendment? Alderman Pittner?
I guess I'd like to get Dave's input on that.
Maybe should have held you closer.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just off the top of my head, I think we ended up 2024 at about 50%. Now, keeping in mind that I think the number we're operating with on this remodel in the CIP for design and the remodel for the police department, I think is north of $17 million, which would be more than half of what we currently have in reserves in the general fund. So that's where that range becomes important, because now that one project is going to draw us down considerably in the fund balance. So our practice that we would want is to look at those large demands and to put a little bit of money aside in a few years to build that balance up, so we don't have those peaks and valleys all the time, so we can minimize these all of a sudden one year where we have a big demand and then the next year our rate goes down. So it's more of a level funding plateau.
Okay. Any other questions of
No,
David?
no questions.
Okay. Alderman Blessing.
Okay, so that actually illustrates the exact reason why this is so important. Because what it starts to do is, rather than saying, oh, we've got something to do, how much money do we have? It starts to say, how much money do we have? Now let's figure out what we're going to do with it. And so instead of that turning out to be 17 million, maybe we find the solution that's closer to 7 or 8 or 9 million. And so that, to me, is an important thing. It helps us keep the decisions that we make in perspective of what the people that are actually funding the projects are seeing at home. And so, to me, it's important that we start drawing this back so that it's going to make our decisions tougher, but that's the point. It's going to make us make decisions. And during the VRF discussion, the city manager was saying, hey, you guys, I need to understand priority here, because we've got roads, we've got a police station, we've got property tax, property tax relief, hopefully. We've got all these different pieces that are coming together. Yes, it's going to make that more difficult, but I think that's the most important piece we can do. And setting this on a trajectory now that keeps us within this range, I know that our team can do it, and so it's important for us from a decision-making standpoint to have the right guardrails.
Further discussion?
Can I just clarify the amendment? So it was to amend the motion to ban between 33% and 50% instead of 75?
It would be between 30 and 50. Yep.
30.
So keeping the 30 that they're looking for, but banding the upper end at 50, I'm sorry, yes.
Everybody clear on the amendment? Alderman Pittner?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Mike. I understand making our decisions difficult and kind of holding not only staff's feet to the fire, but the council's feet to the fire. I just feel when we restrict ourselves to this much, we not only make our decisions difficult, sometimes we make our decisions for us, right? Because yes, we know what decisions with the police station are on the horizon. We know what those costs are going to be. What about the decisions or the costs that we don't know are on the horizon? You know, we came out of a pandemic with hyperinflated costs. So yes, healthy reserves, but again, now we also have restrictions from the state of a 3% cap. That when we might have something that wipes out our reserve, something that's immediate that needs to be done. So again, I don't think I can support the amendment. I like what staff presented, so I'm going to stick with that, and I'll be voting no on the amendment.
Alderman Blessam?
So just one short response to that. The one thing that I will say, again, I think those are all valid questions that each of us should consider. At the same time, the 75 there is no limit there because that is the state limit. That's not imposing anything on Minot that is taking a step beyond for our citizens that the state's requiring. So really what this is doing is it's taking it from, I believe, the 25% that would be in our current policy. It's moving that up to 30, and it's keeping us at the 75. So the way that I look at this is that we're actually going to be collecting and holding on to more under this policy than before I even asked the question. And I think we owe the community more than that, because that, I believe, is why I was elected. That's why I'm sitting up here. And I'm going to stick to it because this is a step in that direction. We need to get there.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Fuller?
Thank you. Listening to Paul and Mike, I guess the big thing that I heard Dave say is he was talking about the unrestricted funds in the general fund right now, and he said 17 million would be about 50%. So we're carrying between 30 and 40 million dollars in unrestricted funds already in our general fund. How much more of the people's money do we need to sit in there and just let sit for future projects or the police station or whatever we want to gifts that we want to do? I think Alderman Blessam's right. I think the amount of money that we hold should be on par with what we want to do next year, not what we want to do in 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, we could sit here on their money all the time, but like he said, we're not supposed to be taking and making money, and that seems like to me almost what we're doing by sitting on a general fund with $30 to $40 million in it already, unrestricted.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. On this part, the one thing that I look at is, and Mike brought it up in the police department, because I do agree, I don't think we need to spend $18 million on the police department to remodel it and do it. I think it could be easily done for half that. And I think as we start to look at these projects, just like he said, we have a big pot of money sitting there. Well, what can we do with that? So we're going to get, the biggest and the best. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the best, but we should live within our means like the citizens of Minot do all the time. They live within their means, and I think we need to do the same thing.
Any further discussion?
No, and I agree with all that. I agree that we should live within our means, and I think we do a good job of that. I mean, I think we went through the VERF discussion. I wasn't able to attend, but I was on there virtually. Again, we have one of the older fleets within the state, if I remember right. We have an aging fleet. We do stretch the taxpayers' dollars a lot further than most communities across the state already do. And my reason for again, and I agree with Mike. Mike feels like that's why he was elected, and that's what he wants to present. I fully support that. Where I'm saying is, I think we have good staff, and if we have $30 to $40 million, if we can make that go further for the citizens, which I believe our staff does, I'm okay falling in line with the state and maintaining that restriction.
Okay.
Mark, one last thing. if I could.
Alderman Blesson.
Thank you. So I guess the one thing that I would say is that if we decide that the status quo or if the amendment dies and we stick with the 75%, the one thing that I think that we need to really start looking at seriously then, and I'll ask for it again during the budget process, is that when we over-collect, which we have done consistently, I think 7 years in a row, when we over-collect that, we immediately return that the next year. Just like I asked us to do it through a motion last year, that we would do the exact same thing again. Because that's what's leading to this in the first place. We have a great set of staff that are doing the right things to do that, but it's our job to put a policy that puts the guardrails on that. That's our job, because otherwise this process leads to too much money sitting aside and not in the people's pockets in the city. That's economic development. That's the dollars that actually get spent in our businesses, get spent in our restaurants, everywhere across town. And right now we're pulling too much of that out.
Okay. The amendment is before us. Any further discussion? If not, then we should vote.
The motion failed 3-3 with dissents from Janser, Olson, and Pittner.
Okay, we're back to the original question. Alderman Pittner.
No, and I just want to pick up where Mike left off on his last comment. At the end of the year, I think that is the best practice, and I like that approach. Right, at the end of the year, we look at where we were, we look at what we collected, and then we look at the citizen satisfaction survey. We look at what do the citizens need. Do we need to put more money into roads? Do we need to put more? We worked very hard over the last 6-7 years putting more money into roads, which has been one of our number one dissatisfaction items with our citizen satisfaction survey. I think it was from $8 million to $12 million. We've slowly crept that up, but we are still. Lance, give me a thumbs up. Are we gaining ground? Or are we losing ground? We're holding even. We're not fixing the backlog. Is that something that we can do with those dollars when our staff do a good job of watching their budgets and saving money throughout the year and finding ways to do more with less? Can we put those dollars towards, can we attack the backlog? Can we do, better sidewalks and walkability, things that are in the satisfaction survey? Those are things, or we give it back to the people. And that's absolutely, that's what we did. We've shown we can do that. And I think those conversations are best have them on a, if you understand what I said there, having them on an annual basis. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Blesson.
Okay, so with the amendment defeated, I would ask the council now to defeat the policy. Because now what we're doing is we're actually loosening the policy. We're actually holding more money by raising the lower number and holding more in reserve than we would have even under current policy. So I would ask you to defeat this as well.
Alderman Pittner.
Can I ask Dave a question? And Dave, I'll ask while you're on your way up. Is that raising of the lower number, is there a reason for that? Is that fallout from legislative session and caps and restrictions on what we can collect annually? Some background on that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, excuse me, the actual ordinance is still 1/12 reserve. However, in your operating funds like the general fund, a 1/12 reserve would be considered pretty thin. So a number of years ago with the prior city manager, that was the directive to move to the 3/12 reserve in all funds and then the 30% in the general fund. I think that probably is more than we need to have there, but somehow we have to have a balancing act. And that's why we came up with the 30%. That was the guidance that we had from GFOA, the updated guidance at the bottom end, and then putting a cap on the top end. So we have a range to work with. Not necessarily that we would always want it to be at 75%, but if we know that we had a project that was coming forward, it gives us some latitude to save up for that. Again, I think that would be part of the process that we would deal with during the budget process annually.
City Manager.
So to follow up on that, so Dave, so the policy has been a 3/12 to satisfy the state law, and then we do an additional 30% by local policy, correct? So that's a total of 60% that we're holding on. So will this policy now remove that 60% and take us back down to just the 30% and not the double overlap?
Mr. Mayor and the City Manager Stewart, there isn't a state law that has a minimum fund balance policy. That is a city ordinance that says 1/12 reserve. And it was the policy implemented by your predecessor that bumped that up to the 3/12 and then the additional 30% in the general fund.
I guess that's my point. I'm comfortable with the minimum of a 3/12 because that falls in line with the Governmental Finance Officer Association recommendations of a 3 to 6 month reserve. So I'm comfortable with that. What I'm not comfortable with is that additional 30%.
Yeah.
And so I like this policy with the range from the 30% to whatever the council decides being the 75% is the maximum. What I disagree with is 2 buckets of 30% being held there. That kind of goes to Alderman Blessam's point that we pull out of the taxpayer's pocket and then we sit on it. So.
And Mr. Mayor and members of the council, it's not a hard bottom number either. The policy also, has guidance. So if you dip below that minimum number, that you correct that within the next 5 years. So it doesn't mean that it has to immediately be back to 30% the next year. It gives you some time to build that back up to the minimum. And that's, again, designed to have some flexibility. If there's something that's unforeseen, again, we're not trying to build up a war chest that we have money here so that we can spend on every cause that comes along. But we still have to have some flexibility in some of those things that are unforeseen as well.
Okay. Any other questions for the finance director while he's here?
Just a comment, not a question.
Okay. Alderman Olson.
Thank you. The reason that I will support this policy is it does give us flexibility, but it still does put the authority and the decision-making in our hands. I don't want to keep that number so low that when we have to make a decision related to some financial need, that our hands are tied. And for those of us who have been up here for many years, those situations come up every once in a while, and it's nice to have the flexibility. I certainly do not support taking unnecessary money. I want to keep taxes as affordable as possible, but we also know that we are the financial stewards for the city, and we have decisions that need to be made, and sometimes we just need that little extra wiggle room.
Okay. Alderman Fuller.
I guess this is for Dave, and Dave, you don't necessarily even have to come up here if you just know the number. So with the 30 to 40 million in unrestricted reserves, what's our percentage then? I mean, are we at 35, 41? What's the percentage that we're holding in unrestricted reserves? Do you know off the top of your head? About 50% then? Okay, so we're sitting at 50% with 30 to 40 million dollars in unrestricted reserves in there. How many projects or items are we going to get to that are going to require more money than that? Exactly Mike's point. We're sitting there already with a boatload of money that we could do a lot of projects with. Now, granted, we don't want to run it down to zero, but if we're at 50% right now and we have 30 to 40 million dollars, I'm going to ask the question again. How much more do we need to have in there for future projects?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessam.
And just to illustrate this a little bit, you know who else could do a project with the money back in their pocket? My daughter and her husband. That's who could do a project. They could put siding on their condo because it needs it. That's who could do a project if we leave the money in the people's pockets. That's what needs to happen. And this isn't even exactly doing that. This is just starting to streamline it a little bit and put guide rails on it so that our decisions become a little more tight and we have to be a little more focused. I don't like planning. I said this during the transit discussion. I don't like planning for the biggest what if we could ever think of. I don't like planning for the fullest a bus could ever be during a year. I'd rather plan for reality and what's actually going on. And yes, we need flexibility, but man, as I look across the funds, we got a lot of money sitting in different funds, and we're about to start up a VERF that's going to set aside a whole bunch of other money in another fund to start making sure that that happens.
City Finance Director.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to make sure it's very clear that you know, the purpose of those reserve funds is not just to fund future projects. It is also to deal with unexpected things that occur. And we had one of those a number of years ago with a major flood in the city where that wasn't something that was planned for in the budget process. So when things like that happen, of course, there's going to be reimbursements from FEMA and some of the federal agencies, but that comes at some point in the future. So when something unexpected like that happens, it's a drain on cash. So the city has to have resources to be able to address those right now or in the immediate. So that's where something like that, and the question is always going to be is how much is enough and how much is too much? So that's the balancing act. And that's where I think we need to address that. And it should be part of the annual budget process and our longer term planning and vision. What do we have coming down the road? What are we comfortable with for a minimum? And what do we think we need to be putting aside to address some of these needs that we know that are 3 or 5 or 7 years down the road?
Dave, before you go, just a follow-up question. So our bonds are rated, correct? And so you have two bonding agencies that can do those ratings, Standard and Poor's or Moody's. One of the things they do look at is reserves. Are you too low on reserves? But they also look at, are you too high in reserves? Have they expressed any concerns with our reserve levels? Have they provided any commentary or suggestion that perhaps we're a little too heavy in our reserves?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and that is usually some of our discussion. It goes both ways. If we're building up reserves, you know, what is the purpose or what's the anticipated purpose for that? So we have that discussion, and the converse is also true. If we're spending down those reserves, was it something that was planned or unexpected? Are we comfortable with the amount of reserve? If we spend it down because it's a one-time project or something that was unanticipated, and we spend it down to a level that we're still comfortable with the reserves, it wouldn't impact our rating. If we start drawing those down to a point where it's uncomfortable or they have concerns, it could impact our rating. But I don't think we're to that point.
So real quick,
Samuelson.
Dave. Right now, we're at 3/12. So that's 25% is our minimum, correct?
Mr. Samuelson, the ordinance right now is actually 1/12.
But we've,
The practice has been 3/12.
okay, so that's 25%. Okay, then my next question on the bond rating that we talk about, is our bond rating not also tied to the state? What the state bond rating is?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Samuelson, I don't believe it is directly related.
Okay, anything further for the finance director? Okay. Motion's on the floor, we have motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, time to vote.
Motion failed 3-3, with dissents from Blessam, Fuller, and Samuelson.
Okay.
Is there other direction the council wants to provide?
Okay, so with that failing, there isn't a policy that's been adopted. I guess there's been plenty of discussion and plenty of opinion as to what might be done. Is there a desire by the council to say anything further in regard to that tonight, or have we kind of identified positions and we're gonna go forward with what we have for the moment? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Alderman Janser. I guess I don't know how this would work for it to be reconsidered. Do we want it to be reconsidered when we have a seventh member of the council? I mean, again, we're not really doing the work of the city when we're just, we end up kissing our sister every night that we show up, 3 votes. I get it, but I maybe look for some direction on How do we actually do the city's work without a seventh member?
What, Alderman Blessam.
Yeah, well, all I was going to say, in this particular case, we fall back to ordinance and policy, or I guess, I don't even know if it's a written policy. I don't even know what that is right now that's driving 3 months, but I mean, that's a different problem, actually. If we want it to be 25, we really ought to bring that and may put it in the ordinance. But I guess my thought would be, because we're going to have a few more months of this, is that we should do what we can to avoid, let's say, putting them on a list. Because if there's still an issue, we bring them up again, right? And we start on that path. Because what I would rather avoid, if we can, is having September through November be just those items, and when we're in the middle of budget. That's my thought, is we should try to limit those if we can. And I'm fine with that, because again, what I heard from council is a lot of people saying, yep, Mike, I get what you're saying, but there's another way to handle the same thing. So during budget, that's when the discussion comes in to say, we took more than we needed and we give it back. So I think that discussion's going to be coming.
Alderman Pittner.
No, and I'm fine with that. And again, and I'll caveat that, we took more than we needed. We put those dollars to work, right? We address backlogs in roads. We attach some of those things as another possibility. But I agree. I mean, in my opinion, the staff do good work. We'll go back to business as usual in the meantime.
Okay, understood. Moving on. Item 6.2 is the adoption of the revised grant management and oversight policy. What are the wishes of the council?
Make a motion to approve.
Moved by Alderman
Second.
Fuller, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion by the council. Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Next item is 6.3, city canvassing board appointments and date selection. There's a recommendation to schedule those canvassing board meetings and to appoint the undeclared councilman and woman to the canvassing board to canvass both special elections. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Moved by Alderman Fuller,
Second.
second by Alderman Olson. Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Fuller.
I guess my only question on this is, the three of us are eliminated from the canvassing board, obviously, for the mayoral election, though. Can we still be part of the canvassing board for the special election tomorrow?
You certainly could
Okay.
if you'd prefer to make that amendment.
I don't care. I was just asking.
Yeah, you wouldn't be disqualified from that at all.
Okay.
Nope.
The other three will get some practice and be efficient, or by the next time.
Is that
maybe.
is that an amendment?
No,
A
I was
motion
just
to amend?
asking a
Okay.
question. I was just asking a question.
Okay. Any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Next item is 6.4. This is a funding request from the Service Basin Planning, or excuse me, from Service Basin Transportation. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman, was that Alderman Fuller? Okay. Moved and seconded. Director Lakefield.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a field promotion, maybe? I don't know. I just wanted to point out something here was a little bit of an oversight on my part. I'd had a conversation with Daryl Francis from Service Basin Transportation. The initial conversation was that the estimate was $300,000 to get through the remainder of 2025. I think in the documentation that he provided, it's a little bit less than that. He spelled out an exact number, so there was a discrepancy in the numbers from the memo versus what Mr. Francis had supplied, so I just wanted to point that out. It was brought up earlier today. So I won't speak for him, but I think the number he had is probably the more definitive number. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Finance Director. I had actually noticed that too and asked about it. And I believe the number that was in the write-up from Service Basin was 261. So I don't know if the motion, if it was for what was in the memo was 300, I believe. Do you wanna change that, and would that be a
I think it's my
friendly?
motion. 261 is the number that Mr. Francis supplied.
Okay.
Certainly will make the
And is the
motion
second
for
good with that?
261,000.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was
Okay.
gonna ask a question. It says estimated on our memo. So do we need to even change anything? Because it says estimated to 300,000. If it's below that, do we need to change anything is all I was asking.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you wouldn't have to change it. If the motion passes as is, the amount of 300,000 would be appropriated, and we don't have to spend that money, and it's coming from reserves anyway, so at the end of the year, the appropriation would lapse, any unspent money would revert back to reserves as well.
Mr. Mayor, Dave, before you go.
Alderman Blessam.
Dave, so is there a formula associated with this? Is there something that tells us up front where we're headed and what it'll look like by the end of the year?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, again, it would be, the 300,000 would be the not to exceed number in this case. So we would review all of the requests for the funding that come in and whatever is approved. And if there's funding left, it would just, the appropriation would lapse.
Alderman Blessam, I think part of this is that the estimates are based on the numbers of transports and so forth. So there is some probably variability into Service Basin's number as well, meaning it could be less than 261, for instance.
Right, and if I can continue, that's actually my question, if one of the, Brian or Brian, if you guys can come up. I think I've been as close to this as anybody, and I want to make sure that I'm clear that I'm understanding, because this is new. This isn't, we're off a little bit this year. No, there's new federal requirements. We're fixing a problem here, and I don't know that we know what we don't know. That's actually what I'm getting at, is there a formula that's driving how we even get to this number? It's our guess at ridership. Have we agreed to how we're reimbursing and how much per ride? How are we going about it?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, I think you're exactly right, that is an estimate based on historical numbers and what they expect through the end of the year. And you're right, we would have to come up with an agreement on how we're going to fund this in some type of written agreement on how that's going to be, where we'd spell out exactly what we are reimbursing him for.
So if I can continue, so then it is best to think of it as a not to exceed, because we're simply authorizing the funds and then empowering whoever's going to go negotiate that with Service Basin. Is that the right way to think of it?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, my anticipation would be that an agreement would be brought back for an approval that would spell out exactly what we're funding.
Is it also true that, so previously the funds were coming from the state, correct? And Service Basin was accessing that stream of money directly, is that correct? Or did it flow through the city?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse here, but my understanding is that the impetus for this change is because of the funding source that we get from the federal government. And because we moved to an urban instead of a rural source of funding, that now limits what Service Basin can receive the federal funding for operating inside the city of Minot. So that is the big difference here. So if we want them to provide those services inside the city of Minot, there has to be an alternative funding source to do that. So otherwise, it would be up to Service Basin or the city or some combination to figure out if services are going to stop or change or some alternative funding source.
Okay. City manager.
And that kind of gets to one of my points and conversations and, potentially being the bad guy, but the realist here. And that is, what's the long-term consequences of the city picking up these costs? Because my understanding is the action tonight is just for 6 months, right? And so in 2026, that number is going to be 600,000. And being in the middle of the budget process and already trying to balance a complicated budget, and if this is a priority of the council, that's fine. I can work on putting this in the budget, but carving out room for $600,000 a year to now support this service is going to come at the consequence of other services and potentially resources, assets that the city has, because we just can't afford to do it all. Right now, you're paying for it through reserves, which we can do for a time, but that's not sustainable for the long haul, and eventually has to be built into our sustained budget, and that's my concern. And I guess I'm looking for direction from council that this continues to be a service priority, that we need to continue to build in the budget, because it's going to come at the sacrifice of other things.
Alderman Blessam.
So, and Dave, if you can answer this, that'd be good. But it feels to me like we've got a lot deeper information that's needed here for us to make this decision. This is just saying, hey, please authorize the funds. I assume that's because they need to have the funds starting up right away in July. So we've got a timeline that we're trying to hit here, right? I guess to the city manager's point, I'm not comfortable that we're setting ourselves on a path. I believe fully in the service that's being provided, because this is helping some of the people that need this the most in our community. And so, but at the same time, we do have to know very cleanly how this works and exactly how that's going to be expended, because I don't believe, and again, if Brian and Brian want to add to this, I don't believe overall we're as bad off as these numbers actually show. We've got to readjust right now because our numbers don't show to the federal government what's actually happening, and I think that's going to work itself out over time. But for the next year or two, it's not a pretty picture dollars-wise.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, I think you're exactly correct, and that's why in the memo, we said that the funding for 2026 would be addressed through the budget process. That gives us a little time to refine these estimates and get a little bit down the path and figure out exactly where the deficiencies in the funding are going to be, and then to further evaluate the priorities if that's something that the city wants to fund going forward.
Okay. Any further discussion by the council? Alderman Pittner.
I guess maybe I'd look to maybe Brian or Brian. Can you guys speak to? Can you speak to this? Can you speak to? Are we hitting the nail on the head that this is going to be an ongoing cost the way that it's set up? Or is there other funding sources that are potentially in the works for Service Basin? Where are we at? Are we going to be Big Brother forever?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Pittner, members of the council, you guys are on the right track. Like I said, we've talked about this numerous times now with the change in urban designation, which caused Service Basin to lose their federal funding for performing their operations within inside the urban area of Minot. Yes, this is a Band-Aid for the next 6 months of this year. I would like to go back to the transportation development plan we've spoken about a number of times, and we've talked about this on the paratransit side of the house as well, which we're looking at, having to put some additional funds, to run that piece of the operation, which is completely separate from the demand response. This $300,000 that is being asked for tonight is not at all paratransit. That's general public demand response services that Service Basin provides in the city. I think you're probably on the right track, Alderman Blessam, that some of these things are going to start to seem to work themselves out a little bit more over the next couple of years when we start to get our heads wrapped around all these different funding sources and how this is all going to look. Another good note that I'll pass on to the council, the state did approve the urban transit study in the off-season for the legislature to be done. That was one of the approved studies. It will be accomplished before the next state legislative session. So they'll be looking at additional, more permanent funding sources as well 2 years down the road. So there are things going that direction. I think the transit development plan will give us a lot of direction once we get through the end of 2026. I think our focus right now really does need to be on managing the funding for the paratransit, helping Service Basin manage the funding for the general public demand response to keep that service in place, And then as we get the results of that transportation development plan, which, Alderman Blessing, you sat there with us on that, there's a lot of pieces on that that's going to be looking at funding and governance and a lot of different things that we're hoping to get out of that to guide us past that 1.5 to 2 year mark moving forward. So I think whatever the council can do to assist Service Basin through that time frame, I think would be prudent to the citizens of our community because it is a very, very much needed service. And if you'd like any other more detailed information on what they're doing and how they're doing it and some of how he has come up with, Mr. Francis has come up with his budget, he is in the room this evening, so I'm sure he'd be more than willing to come up and speak to his operation and what exactly it is that he's looking to try to do moving forward as well.
So, Brian, can you just give us a brief overview of how the 300,000 breaks down? Are we paying per rider? Are we paying, what is it even based on?
Alderman Blessing, I think maybe before we hear that from Brian, Mr. Francis is in the back of the room waving at me. Maybe he'd like to speak for himself with regard to that.
He would be much more able to
Yeah.
talk
You
on
want
that.
to come forward, Daryl?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm new at this. I worked for the city for 33 and a half years, by the way. I was assistant traffic engineer. And then I took over Service Basin Transportation for the last 20 years. And then we built the building across the street, or across the fence. Anyway, I've done the city contract for the last 16 years. And out of those 16 years, Service Basin, we went and got the grants for this system. $1.3 million a year from rural federal government. Well, once you guys went urban, we were not allowed to use that. So out of that $1.3 million, the city of Minot paid $33,000 a year for us to provide paratransit. That's it. I raised the other half of the cash match. That's over $500,000 a year. And we did not ask the city for anything except the paratransit part, which we did flawless. Very few complaints. And I think being with the city all those years, I had experience of fortunately, what the city need. And not only we're just talking about general publics, we're talking about all those people who do not meet the ADA requirements to ride the city bus. I got no problems. We're going to 78% of our riders are the elderly, but they don't fit into the ADA system unless they have a disability. Their age is not part of it. And then the other 15% of the disabled. Could be a combination of both. But all those applications for the ADA system to ride the city bus, that's great. We'll handle, the door-to-door system for them. And that was the $107,000 that we speculate. Because right now, guys, I never had to split it all up. But at the same time, I might deviate a little bit, but I want you guys to be informed. Guess what? You're talking about 3/4 of a mile of the fixed route system. But the MPO district goes from Surrey to Burlington. That's rural, but it's not. Because I can't use rural funding to provide transportation for east side of the state or south side or whatever. Guess what? They're outside of the rural system. My demand response system will keep everything that we do now. That's over 60,000 rides a year. And we charge $3, which is twice the rate of a regular bus fare. And we do door to door. Now just think, if you can walk, I got nothing about the rules. Those are written in stone like Moses from DC. So what happens is, you get on the bus, you can walk to the bus. Wait a minute, okay, you know where the bus route goes? What happens if you get off the bus and you're working for Somerset and you gotta walk 8 blocks down a gravel road to go to work? No, I'm not gonna do that. Our system is door to door. Our demand response takes those figures that we've done for the last 16 years into consideration, and those are the people that need that ride. And for us to say $300,000, guess what? This is the first time we had to split it up. We took care of it all before. And now you want a definite amount of money, I understand. But at the same time, are you looking at all these people that need that ride? Do you know these people that need that ride? I do. And I know the people that are applying for ADA, and I know those who got refused. But if I don't have a demand response by July 1st, I'm a nonprofit. I'm a 501c3 that's been in existence since 1979. And we do over 90,000 rides a year in the counties to inner city, everything else. And what we are asking is not a contribution, but your share. Because if it's going to cost us more than $300,000, I got to raise money for the rest of it. So I'm using county mill levy money. I'm using state aid money. And there is a $2 million legislation bill that was passed, 1106, that gave $2 million to non-fixed route systems. That's us. We can use that. So I already sent a request to the DOT director and saying, okay, what are we going to do? Hopefully the DOT Highway Department will take it over and we can get part of that. But I am saying, I've looked at 16 years of experience and document of our system, and we got a new software that'll give us more details than we ever imagined. And for that, I'm grateful, but that cost us $300,000. So that was our money. Like I said, we have our reserves, but we need that reserves to match the federal grants. So I cannot or will not jeopardize our system for 10 counties, and I don't want to just use 2 vans for the city of Minot. I got 12 routes in the city of Minot right now. Every day. I already got the money for after hours and weekends from the federal grant. Same system, except I had to go through Urban, the MPO, to get that money. And that was a couple $100,000 just so I could run till 10 o'clock at night and weekends, Saturday and Sunday. And that was the only gimme because the city runs 7 to 7. We could run after that with 5310 money, which is federal, like we used before, but we did have to go urban. We're not only competing for this money, of course, you got Grand Forks, you got Bismarck, Fargo, now it's Minot. Minot will get $150,000 a year just to run their ADA. I'm only asking 107. And then we're looking at demand response. That is the kicker. That is the guys who cannot walk to the bus service. They're too far away. They get dropped off too far away. I mean, I know what the systems are. I've been doing this for a long time. And this is the first time I ever got to talk to you guys. Some of you I've talked individually, and I just want you to know what our system does. And we are fair about it all. Trust me, because if we only charge you $33,000 for the last 16 years and doing all that fundraising ourselves, I think we're doing pretty good. I saved you guys $500,000 every year. So I just wanted to get my voice out there because best to get it from the horse's mouth. I've done it the longest of everybody. And I've known some of you guys, met you for the first time. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you because I've been sitting back there with my legs crossed, just waiting to come up here because I had so much I wanted to say. And sometimes I just lose that compassion for these people. They're the ones that need that ride. And I can do everything I can. But at the same time, I don't have money coming out of the yin-yang. So I just want you guys to know that. And you ever got a question and want to see a service, Guys, we spent $5 million, we raised $5 million through the federal grants, and that's what we built, right across from the city shop. We lost that little place behind the icebox. We paid for that. We got good money for it, it was fair. But I tell you what, we don't owe them money on anything. We got 30 vehicles. We got a $5 million building, state of the art. And we're providing transportation to Bismarck, and that's going to be daily after July 1st, possibly. And we're going to look into going to Williston, but we also got 10 counties. But I am concerned about the people outside the bus system. Those guys are not going to be able to get a ride without us. And those who cannot make it to the bus line cannot ride without us. I can't say no. So I want to do as much as I can. We're due diligent, like I said, because we are a nonprofit. We know what the value of a dollar is. So I'm just saying, if you guys have questions, please ask, because I got a lot of things to say. I got a lot of compassion for this. I just want you to know that.
Thank you. Anybody have questions? Alderman Fuller?
Thank you. Mr. Francis, first I want to tell you thank you for your level of passion for this, and for, I respect the hell out of the care you have for all the people that ride with you. I just want you to understand, I don't think anybody up here was being disrespectful or questioning anything that you're doing. We just have to be good stewards of the people's money as well, and so we just have to ask those questions.
No,
Alderman Blessum?
So Daryl, just to continue that, you know, I certainly appreciate the effort. And I think, again, this is an area that I'm starting to get more involved with as I work with Brian and the team. I'll be a part of the TDP process that's coming. The way that I look at this is that this is a bridge until we've worked through that process to understand how the entire area's transit system should work. So I'll just ask the question to you now directly. The $300,000 that we've got laying here, which I truly believe we need to take care of because there's going to be a gap, I just want to understand how we're doing it. Are we paying per ride? Are we paying the $3 back to you on a per ride basis? Are we going to get an invoice that's got that list? How is it going to work?
Mayor and council member, bless them. We're working on to see what the system's doing in Bismarck and Grand Forks. They have done revenue miles, they've done revenue rides. We're looking at it, like I said, the exact numbers, it's new because we don't know how many we're going to start with or how many rides, but the fare thing is going to be a general thing no matter what. If we charge $3, we keep track of all the fares, and we just take that off the expenses. That's when we come to you guys. After that. But at the same time, I'm raising funds, appropriating funds, so I can deal with part of that. So you're not taking on the whole ship. You're taking half of it, or whatever the case may be. But like I said, it's the new system. We're trying to do the best we can to come up with a equity give and take here, because I know exactly what you said.
Continue.
If I can continue, I guess, I hate to say it, I mean, I'm getting less confident where we're headed here. Daryl, again, I believe in what you're saying. I know people that use your service. I know how integral it is to what we're doing. But our job is to help the city enter into contracts that make sense. And that's not to be on the winning side. That's to have something written that says what it's going to cost. And I realize that we're on a time crunch. I mean, we're headed for July 1, but is our first invoice coming, August 31st? I just need to know what that's going to be based on. I assume you need the money. I'm generally supportive of this because I was expecting this, working with Brian and Brian, but I got to understand what we're even doing here, because it also starts, to Harold's point, it starts to look at the 26 budget, because we're going to need it through 26, or at least through the first half of 26, which means it's a budgeted item as well. So I just feel like we need more info, and I realize we're under a time crunch.
Mr. Mayor and Mike, Councilmember Mike, bless him, sorry. I totally agree with you. Like I said, this is a new thing for us. I mean, I had to come up with an estimate. I got to come up with an estimate now for next year. Guess what? We're trying to base this on as accurate as we can with the fair share and what we can get in through the state aid, what we can get in. I mean, state aid has already been allocated. The Ward County money that started in January. I mean, so all this put together, but this is the best accuracy estimate that I can give you. And what we sit down and figure out what we're going to do with the per ride or whatever. I don't think the per ride thing is fair, but we can go that way, and then we just put all the costs based on per ride. I mean, some of the ones like in Grand Forks and Bismarck, they are generally about $32 per ride based on revenue rides. Based on revenue miles, it's about $1.60. That's what I got lately. We can do that, but like I said, I want to make sure you guys aren't taking the whole thing, you're just taking part of it, and we're raising the money to do as much as we can. I might even be able to get more from the state if they come up with that 1106. Once they figure out how to do the formula, how they give it out. But I can't give you an exact number right now, but I work with Brian and we'll try to come down with a good formula. That's all I can say. Because I do not have the exact numbers. And I can't tell you what it's going to be next year unless we have some 2 or 3 months of data behind us. But it's got to be done before October, so September and October. But I'll do the best we can. But I need support from the city.
Alderman Blessam.
So, Daryl, if I could ask because again, I came into this supportive and now I'm less so. So that's not a good thing. Should we be looking at an amendment to what we've been presented? Because right now the motion is to accept as presented. Should we be looking at an amendment that buys you what you need, your best estimate until September or whatever date you need to know, so we can get the data we need and actually start working from a contract that makes sense rather than guessing at $300,000 for the rest of the year?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Blessam, I disagree with that. I think you guys are putting the chips on the table after the fact, and we're going to start July 1st. I cannot guarantee you exactly what it's going to be. I only got 28 days or whatever to do this, and for you guys be on board later, that's fine. Like I said, I don't know what the demand is. I do have past experience on what our new system is doing, has provided more efficiency. We don't have as many, and that really helps us a lot. But that was only started middle of April, so we're working on all those figures. I just want to get this out there, so if we can bring more exact numbers, that's fine. I totally agree. But for support-wise, this is it. I don't know, you're going to vote on it or just sit on it. I don't know. Just being honest, guys, I got a passion for this system, and I know the people that ride it. And we'll go from there. I mean, we'll work on it together. And the final figures, that'll come out. That's all I got on that.
Quick.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Daryl, I think what Mike was maybe asking, and not saying he didn't understand it, but let's say we take that $300,000 and we divide it by 7. It's roughly $42,000 a month. If we gave you $42,000 a month for the next 4 months, so we can see the numbers and the data, having a caveat at the end saying, okay, we'll get you through the next 4 months, and then after we see the data, we'll give you the rest to get you through the end of the year, because it may be more or may be less. Is that okay would that work with you?
That's perfect. That's what we're looking at before. We're not sure what, we are going to trim anything that we don't need. But at the same time, I'm just looking for the demand and the support. Sorry, I didn't address this.
Alderman Blessam, is that what you were going for?
Yeah, I mean, some version that again holds on to some kind of guardrails because we got to learn. And I guess I would throw out to city staff, I mean, do we enter into any contracts like this ever? I mean, this, like, we're pretty much saying here, we think it'll be around this, so go ahead and appropriate it, and we'll wait to see the bills? Is that the approach?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, we do have similar circumstances that we do calculate out formulas. We could take the 911 dispatch. You know, there's a formula in there that we pick up a certain percentage. And so once the cost of operating the dispatch center is calculated, then that's dispersed out through those percentages. We negotiated with the MPO board on what the financial contributions of each entity at the table would be. I think that was a combination probably of population and lane miles and those types of things. So we can calculate this out. What I don't know is what the best mechanism here is. It, you know, it states here in the memo that there's 62,000 rides within the city of Minot. Well, if you provide 100,000 rides a year, then maybe we're 62% of that. And so you take in what, you know, he mentioned earlier that you kind of take the revenues off of the ridership out, and then, if I'm understanding correctly, and then the remaining operational costs, because this isn't even a break-even operation, right? This is something that government subsidizes for a reason, right? And so, you know, what we're talking about is that difference of operational costs that isn't covered by the revenues they can generate through operation, right? And so where that's based off of population or ridership, those are things that we can discuss going forward, because I do agree with you. There has to be some mechanism that clearly outlines in here how we calculate what the city of Minot's share is here to make sure it's fair and equitable across the 10-county region. But at the end of the day, what's triggering this is we used to be a rural community and now we're an urban community, and that's what's creating the conflict. So, and I would like to hear some point in the future, again, going back to my previous comment, if there are other funds that we can tap into that we just need to apply for and go through that process, I want to know what those are, because that'll give me a little bit more comfort here as far as the sustainability. But right now, what I'm hearing is we've become ineligible for a source of funding, and we haven't identified where that funding is going to come from, other than the city of Minot or wherever else we can find it. And that's not I'm not recommending the council not proceed with this. This is an important service. They've done a phenomenal job for 16, 20 years in providing this service. We have some people that I go to church with that rely on this service to get to church every Sunday. So I understand and appreciate the need, and I understand why our system will not meet that need. But at the end of the day, it comes with financial impacts, and that's one of my jobs, is to make sure that we think through that before we get too far off into the weeds.
Alderman Pittner.
Just to be clear, I think you stated we as a city don't enter into any of these contracts without that are formed like this, correct? But this,
I don't, unless I'm not thinking of something.
to that
Could
point,
be.
and I'll look to Dave. Maybe Dave, this isn't a contract, correct? This is more in lines what we're going to see later on our council agenda is community contributions, filling a need. The council on aging. You know, I mean, this to me is there is a population within our community that needs to be serviced and needs to be served, and if this is a way to do it, I get it, right? I want to know, I'd like to know 3, 4, 5 years in the future what this is going to cost us. But again, I think this is the stopgap. This is where we're at. Are we willing to put a stopgap in place until we get a clear picture, whether that be through the state legislative body or identifying other funds that are available? So again, I just want to make sure this isn't a contract, correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you're correct. This is not, it's kind of a chicken or egg scenario where we can develop the contract. If the council doesn't have the appetite to appropriate the funding, there won't be a contract. So we're here asking for the appropriation. If this is something the council wants to fund and move forward, we'll work up the mechanism similar to the community contribution contracts like we do with the other entities, where we'll lay out either services type of agreement or some type of reimbursement mechanism if it's based on the number of rides or a flat monthly fee. We'd spell that out in the contract and bring it back to the council for approval. I think what this would give is if the council appropriates the funding and blesses the money award. It gives Mr. Francis a little bit of security, knowing that the funding is there. We just need to work through the details of the contract and how the reimbursement will work, and would bring that back to the council for approval.
Alderman Blessam.
So Dave, just to follow up on that, does this look different just in terms of where it falls in the agenda and everything related to it because it's a budget amendment for this year? Is that, I mean, because we're going to have presentations from other community groups later. Is that what's different here?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, it does, because this is kind of a stopgap measure to get us through the remainder of 2025. And we're looking at other alternative funding sources to fund some of this going forward. And we don't have definitive answers. One of the questions was using entitlement dollars to fund a portion of this moving forward. So there could be varied funding sources that introduce a level of complexity as well. If we use other federal monies to pay for some of this, then it's either a subrecipient agreement or some other type of agreement. So it's very similar in the request to what we're going to hear here shortly, but it can vary because this is for 2025, and then also depending on where the funding comes from moving forward.
Okay.
Real quick, Mark.
Alderman Scott.
So in, Darrell, in looking at the figures here, your estimates and that you have the projected expenses, that's for 6 months. That's for your whole system, correct? That's not just the service in Minot.
Mr. Mayor, council member, yes, that's just for the city of Minot. It's got nothing to do with 10 counties. Well, everything that I separated is the MPO district that's been established by the city of Minot.
Okay, so then the other question I have, I'm just trying to clarify
Yes.
this. In there you have that approximately 64,000 rides each year to the residents of Minot and the surrounding area.
Yes.
So my other question then again, going back to the expenses, is that just the Minot area or is that the Minot area, Minot and surrounding area?
Minot and the MPO district.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Francis? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council member, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by the council?
I would just like to make a comment, and I know that service basin is needed. My frustration is urban and rural. These are the kind of things that happen when we decide that we want more federal money or state money or whatever it is, and we go after it. We change it so that, I guess we didn't really change it. Somehow we got to 50,000 people and now we're at 47,000 people. It's frustrating as can be. And then the government, the feds, make us decide that we set up our system the way they want it, whether it works for Minot or not. And they give us rules that we're supposed to go by. Well, if they have this grand plan, why don't they give us their grand plan and how we're supposed to figure it out? Now we have to go through this process for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years till we figure it out. And what it does is it costs the citizens more and more money. And I don't think we improve anything. I said before that Service Basin has been doing an absolute fantastic job with our parasystem. And now the federal government decides they know better than we do. It's frustrating. We do need to support Service Basin, but it's frustrating.
Alderman Olson.
Thank you. And I'll agree with Alderman Samuelson, just for part of his comment, that our hands were tied by the federal government. And we asked the questions when we went into all of this with the MPO, whether or not we could opt out, and we can't. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that this was not a City of Minot decision, it wasn't a Ward County decision, it was a federal government decision, and we have to follow that. But I wholeheartedly stand behind the funding for this, because as it's been said earlier, we're providing a service to people who desperately need that service. And we need to find the money to make that available. I know there was a little bit of question on whether or not the amount was 261,000, 300,000. I want to stick with my first motion, which was 300,000. I think we're going to be able to figure all of that out in the next couple of months, but 300,000 is the amount in my motion.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I think it's time to vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, moving on. That brings us to item number 7, which is personal appearances. I'm just going to quickly review the guidelines for public comment at tonight's meeting. We use Robert's Rules of Order as a guide. Everyone should remember that public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to inform the governing body about their views. The meeting in which public comments are allowed still is run by the governing body with clear, concise guidelines in place. The chair will determine if the comments are outside the purview of this meeting. Unless otherwise specified, public comment is considered a one-way communication. It is not intended to serve as a debate or a question and answer period. For tonight's meeting, public comment from any one person is limited to 5 minutes. A stopwatch is viewable on the screens. If the governing body wishes to extend the time a speaker is given, an affirmative vote must be taken. A speaker's time may not be yielded to another speaker. The unused time from a speaker is transferred back to the governing body. Comments should be related to a topic that falls under the authority of this governing body. Campaigning for any political office or specific candidate is not acceptable. Comments with the same sentiment or belief should be kept concise to allow for the meeting to move forward efficiently. Public appearances. Anyone who wishes can step forward, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, my name is Marjorie Taylor. I live at 616 17th Avenue Southwest in Minot. We've owned that property since I was 3 years old. I ran a copy of the notice that we were sent from the City Planning Department on the zoning change for the Our Lady of Grace Church. And I brought that for you to read it to see why the other neighbors weren't concerned. They haven't contacted anyone at the city to find out what's going on, or the planning department as to why they are doing a zone change. I worked for Northern States Power for 35 years in the engineering department, and part of my duties was to read the city council meetings to find out what would affect us as utilities. So when I saw this, it got my curiosity up as to why do they need to have a zone changed over there. Well, the bottom line is you can't build a $4 million commercial-sized building in a residential area. They don't give building permits for that. So when you guys were presented that, all of a sudden they come up with this, the federal RLUPA, they called it. That's the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Person Act of 2000. And they used that to push this forward. Well, what they've done is discriminated against the people that live 300 feet around the new construction area. And I don't know who they sent that information to, the Minot Public Schools, but they weren't curious. They didn't call the city planning and say, well, what's up? Because then they weren't provided any information. So I took the information over to the city principal, or the Edison School principal, and I left it with the secretaries and my phone number in case they wanted to call and see what was going on. But that was after you guys already approved the zoning. So it's like a done deal. Well, this is a big change for the neighborhood, and when they do find out, I don't suspect they're going to be happy that they weren't informed. I have contacted the Planning Commission numerous times in the last 5 or 6 months to please provide the information to the people in the 300-foot area surrounding Our Lady of Grace Church as to actually what the plan is there. So of course you don't have anybody protesting it, because if you read that little notice that I gave you, it makes it seem like, don't worry, this doesn't concern you. It won't do anything with your property. Well, the school, when I contacted the superintendent of schools, he had no idea what was going on, hadn't heard anything about it, and he was not for it. He contacted the Minot Planning Commission, and he voiced his opinion to that. But it didn't matter, because you guys already approved that. So it's a moot subject for him. So I think this is a form of discrimination to the neighborhood, and it sounds to me like I need to make a petition up and take it around to all of the neighbors and tell them what you guys are up to. I need a staff to do that. I'm retired. I'm an old girl here. I don't want to go door to door. I learned that when I was a Girl Scout trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, you know? So there's something wrong here. And I think the City Planning Commission should provide information to the neighborhood. They're expecting the neighborhood to contact them to find out what's going on. This isn't right. And if you see something, say something. And I've been saying it over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, well, they already approved it. Too late. You snooze, you lose. So I don't know what to do here. You have any suggestions? Should I get a protest going? Go door to door? Bring it to your attention what's going on? Because they're building a $4 million, the food bank, food pantry, whatever they're calling it, is the size of 4 residential houses in my neighborhood. And the neighbors do not know what's going on. The ones I haven't informed, they aren't for it. But they're old people, and they don't want to come down and raise a stink. So I'm raising the stink for them. And do you have any comments for me? What should I do?
Ma'am, I think earlier the city attorney outlined the process that's taken place.
Right, and that's a bunch of baloney. We got that letter, and that's it. That's the only conversation that's come from the city notifying the neighborhood as to what is going on there. So they can add on to their church building, that's allowable. They can double the size of the rectory, that's allowable. They've already built 2 residential-sized buildings on their property for their food bank. But now they want to make it into this, it's a huge situation that they're coming up with here, and it's right, the driveway for it is right across the street from the main entrance to the Edison School. The semis from the North Dakota Food Bank brings delivery. He can hardly make the turn on the corner of 17th Avenue and 7th Street, because this isn't, the school district has their supplies delivered by a van. And the other big truck that comes through there is for the garbage truck that picks up the cardboard over at the church. That's how they fund their food pantry, is with cardboard, part of it. But I feel it's a real disservice to all of my neighbors as to not being informed as to what's going on. And as far as being considered public, what does that mean? This is the first time that a church has been zoned public in this town. What does it mean then? Is it a public property then? We take care of the parking lots and the sidewalks for them then? Maybe all the churches want to get on that little bandwagon too. It's just, there's something wrong here. It's been pushed through without informing the neighborhood. And I would like the neighborhood to be able to say yay or nay. Do you want a $4 million food bank right here with all this extra traffic? We have got a very busy street there already. Very busy. Edison School, from when it was built, when I went to first grade there, it's had multiple additions put on. This is a big school now. And if they sent that information for the zoning to the principal of Edison School, they've got their hands full taking care of all those kids, not to worry about. I mean, when you read that letter that we were sent, it definitely tells you that there's nothing to worry about here. Nothing. It won't change anything for you, that's a lie.
Okay, ma'am, we're well beyond your.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
But do you have any advice? Should I get a petition up? Should I go trotting door to door and say yay or nay? Do you yes or no? What do you want here? Do you want this in our community? Do you want it? Because that question has not been asked.
I certainly can't advise you as to what you want to undertake. I think as
Well,
was
on
said-
that piece of paper,
As
it
was
says
said-
that there's ways of objecting to this, and by me getting a hold of the city planning, they had no advice for anything like that. It was just, it's a done deal, you know?
As I said, the city attorney has explained that, what the process is that we have in our ordinances that we go by, and that process was followed. And I guess that's all I can let you
Well,
know at this time.
If you look at that letter that they sent out, she said it's a form letter, and they just tweaked it a little bit for this information. They didn't tell the neighbors, what are you doing there? So this is really a disservice to my neighborhood.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
We're still in public appearances. People can come forward. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, my name is Melissa Wright, 12 3rd Street Southeast, Arnie's. Last council, you guys approved the Base Camp Indian Restaurant liquor license, and I'm here to advocate for them. If I make sure I'm saying it correct, okay. In 2024, they had applied for license and did not get them, but they paid their $3,125, I think is what we paid, something like that. And they were not able to use that. And we're now in June, and they've been able to acquire everything they need to get liquor license. You approved it, the state has approved it, and we're asking them to pay another $3,125. And then 6 months later, we're asking them to pay another $3,125. They also have another restaurant here that they are going to be applying for liquor license, so that's another $3,125 that they'll be paying. I'm asking, I guess, I keep hearing the council say, we're business friendly, we're this friendly. You've got a person that has come in and actually brought in 2 restaurants within a year and a half. And they're different restaurants. They're not a Mexican restaurant, they're not another hamburger joint. They're different. They're things that the base want, they're things that other people in the community want. And so I'm here to ask you to show that we are business friendly. I think that you should take the 2024 and put it onto their 2025. They realize that they'll have to pay it again in January to renew that. But they're also going to pay $3,000, whatever, $125 for their other restaurant if they're able to get the license for it from you guys. So I'm just here advocating for them. If we really are business friendly, let businesses know stuff happens. Things don't go as planned, but we're welcoming you into our community, and we understand that. And I understand there's things in place, but I also understand that we should be North Dakota nice, and we should welcome businesses. I mean, if they have to do this, they're spending what, $15,000 something dollars in about a year and a half just to do business. So I'm just asking you to reconsider, think about it. You know, we're wanting businesses to come in. We have to also know that stuff happens. They were not able to get it because of language. People couldn't understand them. You know, that's for me, I'm just thinking, let's prove that we're business friendly and that we can help people.
We're still on personal appearances.
If I may, just for a quick point of order
city
on
attorney.
that question. So the alcoholic beverage license, the question that Ms. Wright raised about reimbursing their fees, it was addressed at the last city council meeting. So this would fall under the question of whether or not the council wants to entertain a motion for reconsideration. You can do that at the meeting the question was addressed at, or the next succeeding meeting, which would be this meeting here. And it has to be a member of the council that voted with the majority on the question that would raise the question for reconsideration. So just looking at the minutes that were just approved at this meeting, the motion to approve with waiving the previous fees, the ayes were Mark Janser, Paul Pittner, and Scott Samuelson. The nays were Blessum, Rob Fuller, and Lisa Olson. The motion failed, so the majority on that particular question would be with the prevailing vote. So Alderman Blessum, Fuller, and Olson could raise the question to move to reconsider it at this meeting. So something to consider as we move through the rest of the personal appearances.
Okay. Still on personal appearances. Anyone care to address the council?
Mayor Janser, council members. My experience with SBT, Service Basin Transit, has consistently been poor and difficult with selective ridership, with concerns on safety. It shows in reviews. It could be great. I do believe that they need support. The day after the last city council meeting, I was passing by the east side of Roosevelt Park, where Wagner Construction had a crater in the ground with a lot of heavy equipment moving. Yellow on the map. The driver in a truck asked, "Does it meet your approval?" I said, "It's wonderful." I thought he was talking about the weather. After I saw Ackerman asphalt on the truck, I stopped and rolled back. I asked what is it that he meant. He said this. He was taking his shot at being an asshole. After I addressed the need for a third-party contractor overseeing planning and inspection for the city, which appears to be necessary here. I told him it's disappointing. I shared with others that it looks like kindergartners were given a print and a bunch of signs. There are no safe routes using the sidewalk for wheelchairs because of MDU and park construction. Construction backfills using different materials rather than recycled asphalt, causing me to get stuck. When it rains, I cannot enter the park. The sidewalks that can be used, green on the map, are covered with debris from construction clearing the street. The Minot Park paths east and west of 7th Street in blue, I cannot use because they're still incomplete since 2023, having to use 4th Avenue red, being close to traffic, making it unsafe. I use 7th Street in traffic, red, because there is no sidewalk. Bicyclists and runners do, too. Purple, which would be safest, I cannot use. The Burdick Expressway route is twice as long and lacks as much safety. He said that he remembered seeing me stroll on the other side of the park. I told him that I meet a friend who's 86 almost every day, even when it's -10. Of all the things that I addressed, he said he would work on the signage and that he was working on and was waiting on signs. How do you not have signs that you need before you need them? This is planning. There is no signage for trucks entering on either side of the hill, which is X, where they were doing construction, or on the residential area where cars often speed around the two curves by Minot Parks. There is no signage that the sidewalk is closed at the top of the hill. The signage of a flag person in pieces on the ground was never used. There is no barricading around the crater or hills of dirt to keep the children in the neighborhood out, and the heavy equipment entrance was just blocked where vehicles or bikes could enter. There is no longer a street light in the park or on 7th Street for safety, where Houston Engineering put up cameras to monitor construction. There is no signage for traffic to slow down on Central Avenue and 7th Street as trucks and heavy equipment enter and pedestrians bike and jog, as there are no sidewalks. When I addressed accessibility in the park with Wagner Construction, they told me that they were told to make it accessible for pedestrians, not necessarily wheelchair users. When I addressed with Minot Parks the parking lot being cleared, a change order being made for Wagner Construction to do it, the bridge was blocked off by Minot Parks 2 weeks before it needed to be. Wagner Construction was not aware that it was to be closed off. I could not meet my friend to stroll with snow still being on the ground. When I addressed accessibility with park construction, they said they were given a 4,600-page bid package. He didn't know all of what was in there. Where the sidewalk was not backfilled entering the park, I was told it would be in 2 days, then I could cross. When I addressed the 4x8 planks on the false bridge not being secure to be safe, they were left not fixed without stakes. When the city of Minot Parks and Souris River Joint Board address signage and safety, I don't know what they mean, or safety for who. In the bid packages, were ADA requirements and accessibility addressed for safety to have equal access and enjoyment? Did Houston Engineering, Ackerman Esfold, or the Souris River Joint Board consider it? Ryan Ackerman, President and Chief Executive Officer of Ackerman Esfold, who works closely with the city and is providing the Citizens Alley. I wonder what this means for me. I pass by it several times a day. Will it meet ADA requirements? Will it be accessible for people like me with disabilities? Will the bathrooms continue to be difficult to use? Will there be inclusion? City Manager Harold Stewart, you put in an application for Washington. I believe that you are...
Ms. Gunderson, your time has expired.
May I wrap up, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to add a minute to Billy's time.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Yes, aye.
City Manager Harold Stewart, you put in an application in Washington. I believe that you already see yourself there and that you're not committed to the people in Minot. We were looking for someone when we found you. I look forward to a city manager who respects ADA requirements and accessibility and will hold city staff accountable to do the same. Thank you.
We're still in public appearances. People who want to address the council. 5-minute window.
Good evening. I'm Josiah Royce, and I'm here again to talk about the Constitution and how far we've gotten away from it. A fellow patriot I know put together this lovely binder, which I have had a car accident with, or rather an accident in the car. But the point of it is the right to travel, and that book that fell. We'll get to that in a minute. But as far as getting away from our constitutional rights, I bet nobody else in here, maybe almost nobody else in here, was aware that we have a constitutional right to travel. When you think about the things that our citizens are put through on a regular basis in terms of how they get in trouble that is not really things that affect the community in a negative way, doesn't really hurt anybody, but yet people are sitting in jail over technicalities, over, I spoke to one gentleman who was in jail for, I think it was about 3 months, for expired tabs on his license plate. Cop asked him, do you know they're expired? He said, yes. Why are they expired? He said, I don't have the money to renew them at this time. He was a man in his mid-60s. Well, so they threw him in jail for 3 months. I don't see that he was causing any harm to the community. I don't see why it's necessary to incarcerate the man for it. But people keep on asking me, as I speak about the Constitution and how we need to get back to it, they ask how we've gotten away from it, what I'm even referring to. I've spoken here quite a bit about ways that we've gotten away from it, but this is one of the topics I hadn't mentioned yet, something that affects, I would say, everybody on a regular basis. So, many years ago, there's this binder, just to be clear, what it's full of, Supreme Court case rulings. Now, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and when the Supreme Court rules on something, that's pretty done, said, and final. So I'll read as follows. U.S. Supreme Court says, no license necessary to drive automobile on public highways and streets. A lot of people wouldn't, think twice about that because we were just born into this system, going back however many years, decades and decades, It's the stuff that our grandparents are used to. But I want to point out something, just some, things that should pop up in your questions about the logic of things. When foreigners fly into our country, they can rent a car and drive around. Do they have a driver's license? Do they pass one of our driver's license tests? Isn't that weird that foreigners have more rights in that sense here than we do? One might think that's strange. Furthermore, the progression of technology is not supposed to decrease our constitutional rights. So the Second Amendment, some people would argue that, that was for muskets. No, it was for arms at the time. It's not limited to technology of the time. There's nothing in the Constitution that says, as far as arms technology goes right now. Same things for vehicles. You ever seen a horse with a license plate on its butt? Never going to happen. So these things, as they progress, and you think that these things progress that are for our human benefit, they're for our benefit. Cars are better, faster than getting around than horses, and yet it comes with more restrictions. And as technology advances, we become more and more and more restricted. Which brings me to the topic of the flock security system. I know that's not on the agenda for tonight, but I cannot tell you how upset I was when I was under the impression that bill was going to be killed last time. And Mr. Fuller, you saved it. And you call yourself a conservative. And if you have any care for the Constitution, you should be ashamed and embarrassed to yourself. Furthermore, just to reference that Supreme Court case ruling I spoke about, if you guys want to look it up, it's Thompson versus Smith. And that's just one. There are dozens and dozens and dozens in here. And I got to tell you, just in the last few months, I've gotten to be quite irritated in my further education about how things run since the announcement of this special election. Learning about the puppet strings and who really runs the city, the deep state of Minot, the Minot Mafia. And I got to tell you, it's disgusting. I've lived here all my life. This is home. We can do better than this. The mayor was excused and is still being paid. The chief was excused and is still being paid for their crimes. What kind of example does that set? And in closing, I've talked a great deal about Sheriff Richard Mack. People like to doubt the things I've said, but I'll have you know, the sheriff's coming to town, and he's looking forward to talking to you all. Thank you.
We're in public appearances. Anyone who wishes to speak to the council?
Good evening. Can everyone hear okay? Thank you. Good evening. I don't have a speech prepared, just a little general consideration for the council. I've spoke a couple times on, I'm going to speak against overall spending and the flock system, but I'd like to make a couple of announcements. Thank you. Or a couple of comments on what Josiah just said about that. That is so true about how we've gotten so far away from the original core beliefs of our founding fathers. If anyone has ever taken the time to read the Declaration of Independence, or if you've read the Bill of Rights, the one that always gets me is when they say, what is the scope and the purpose of government? What is its sole job? We believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in order to secure those rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Pretty beautiful statement, I think. I mean, it was supposed to be kind of a symbiotic balance that, the people wanted the government was to provide something for them, and we were trying to live in harmony. But, that'll kind of lead me into this next thing. I mean, where are we going? Does anyone have a master plan, or is this the blind leading the blind? Where are we going? What does the city think that it's doing when it just always wants to pile and more and more and more expenditures on top of it? I get it. You have responsibilities. There are things to take care of. There's road work. I feel for you. I know it would be a headache at times. I really do. But what is necessary? What is a core? I come in here and I look around. Nice building. Great. You guys got some really, really nice features to this, and I'm sure you spent a pretty penny for it. And then now you have a new police station, and now you want to put up expensive cameras everywhere. Do you ever have the heart? You ever driven up and down the streets in this town? Have you ever looked at some of the squalor and the conditions that the other human beings have to live in this town? I mean, how is that fair and equitable for the people behind me and the people in this city that are struggling when you've got this entity that, and it's not just you, it's obviously the federal mafia, the state mafia, everyone that just wants to take. It never ends. And all I'd like to say is, is it absolutely necessary? Is it absolutely necessary? Whether I come and speak at this beautiful building, or if you guys had recycled cardboard boxes, it wouldn't change anything for me. As long as we have a place that we can have some open communication, that does the job. That's great. But do we need this stuff? I mean, is it absolutely necessary? Are we in a war zone that you have to have? I don't want to live in, like I said last time, I don't want to live in East Germany. I don't want to live in a place like how the people in Palestine have to live under an open air prison system. I mean, maybe it's not going to get that far, but maybe it will. I mean, government has a long history of telling us one thing and doing something else. So you're great at marketing. Hey, this is only for safety and security, and we're going to protect children, and we're going to protect all these old people. And yet the evidence shows, like Josiah said, is that you're gonna use it as another way to put people in the prison industrial complex. You're gonna put them in jail. You're gonna steal their money. What happens if you have an infraction of the laws? What do you guys do? Do you ever help anyone? Does anyone ever help? I mean, let's say someone has a mental illness and they committed a crime or something. Is it just always the same, like a Chinese rubber stamp factory? Find him, throw him in jail. When he finally gets out, he's probably less. I know that's probably above and beyond, what you guys do here, but it makes a point. I mean, if you're putting up a camera system with the sole purpose of trying to catch more people, where does that get us? Look at our society. We don't seem to be going up. In so many ways, we seem to be kind of circling the drain. And I hope there's something I can say that would at least get you to reflect upon it a little more. I mean, this is not necessary. We can live without a camera system. We can live without it. We have, I mean, you say, I think I heard it one time before, you say that you're short on police right now. Okay, is that what this is? Well, instead of having more officers, we're going to have cameras everywhere. I mean, I just think that's a really bad idea. I think the expense of it is a really bad idea, and I think you guys in the police station and everyone else should have to live like if my roof leaks, I can't just go buy a whole new building. We don't have that luxury. If I have to go up there with, tinfoil and rubber, I'll fix it to get me by. It'll get me by. So anyway, I will concede the rest of my time back to the other people. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.
Okay, we are still in public appearances. Anyone else like to address the council this evening? Seeing none, we will move on. Miscellaneous and discussion items, number 8, 8.1, the MACA report. Good evening.
Hello. Do we have a slide? There we go.
So, good afternoon, Mayor Janser and members of the City Council. Thank you guys for having us. My name is Tanya Vidko.
And I'm Miles Barcombe. We serve as the co-executive directors of Minot Area Council of the Arts, also known as MACA. Together with our board, community partners, and incredible artists, we're working every day to make Minot a more vibrant, connected, and creative place to live our lives.
So for over 50 years, the Minot Area Council of the Arts has been the heart of our city's creative life. We're a nonprofit, membership-based organization with a mission that's simple but powerful, supporting artists, building community, and fostering possibilities.
Oh, that was the right one? Okay. We currently operate with 2 part-time co-directors and 1 part-time summer staff member and an engaged board of 11. We also support over 50 local artists and arts organizations, and nearly every cultural group in Minot connects through MACA in some way. The arts are more than just entertainment. They're economic drivers, community builders, and a powerful source of well-being. According to the most recent AEP6 report that was released last year, arts and culture generate over $20.8 million annually in local economic impact. They support over 452 jobs, and for every dollar of public arts funding, there's an $11 return. 1 in 3 attendees of events, local arts events in Ward County, come from outside Ward County.
And beyond the numbers, the arts improve mental health, enhance education, attract and retain residents, and strengthen civic pride. They remind us of our shared humanity, and in today's world, that matters more than ever.
At MACA, we make arts accessible and visible in everyday life through programs such as Arts in the City, World Fest, Artworks in Minot, MACA Yak, and the Creative Collective.
We extend our impact through community outreach, artist support, and meaningful partnerships, and by planning free, all-inclusive events that bring people together to celebrate Minot's creative spirit.
Arts in the City is one of our most visible and loved programs, a free summer concert series that transforms Oak Park and downtown spaces into hubs of creativity and connection. Each week, we feature live music, visual art, and performances that are open to all. Over the past 2 years, we've hosted 30-plus concerts and welcomed more than 12,000 attendees. It's more than just entertainment, it's a celebration of community. Families, neighbors, and visitors come together to experience the arts, support local talent, and enjoy the heart of Minot.
And World Fest is a powerful example of how the arts can expand access and deepen connection in our community. Through our partnership with Arts Midwest, we've brought internationally touring artists to Minot for week-long residencies that include school visits, public performances, and meaningful cultural exchange. Many of the students and community members who participate wouldn't otherwise have access to this level of global art and interaction. In just a few years, World Fest has reached over 6,000 students and more than 1,000 adults across our region. It's programs like this that reflect the strength of our partnerships and real value of investing in the arts.
Artworks in Minot is a simple but powerful way we keep creativity visible in our daily lives. It's a rotating gallery program that places local artwork in businesses and public spaces throughout the city turning waiting rooms, offices, and storefronts into opportunities for connection and inspiration. It supports local artists, brightens everyday environments, and reminds us that art doesn't just belong in galleries, it belongs anywhere people are.
And MACYAC is our Youth Advisory Council. This group empowers young leaders to design and lead arts-based events and projects that speak directly to their peers. It's not just about participation, it's about ownership. These students gain hands-on experience in event planning, leadership, and creative expression while helping shape a more vibrant, youth-driven arts scene in Minot.
We also have the Creative Collective, formerly known as Artists After Hours, and it's our way to bring artists and creatives together outside of formal events. It's a space for connection, collaboration, and celebration. From networking nights to themed showcases, the Creative Collective builds community among local creatives and helps them share their work in meaningful ways. So building a support system for the people who make our city more vibrant.
And here's what our numbers look like for our impact. We have over 30 free events each year. We've supported more than 200 artists through paid opportunities and promotion. We've engaged over 8,000 community members across our programs, and we've built 30-plus partnerships across education, business, and the nonprofit sector. The real impact goes beyond the numbers. Every event is an open invitation for people to connect, discover, and belong.
As fiscal agents, we have the opportunity to support some truly impactful community projects. One of those is the Union Silos Project, led by internationally renowned artist Guido Van Helten. When completed, it will be North Dakota's largest public mural, a powerful addition to Minot's landscape and a reflection of who we are as a community. It will also attract visitors, and the painting just started last week after the rain stopped.
Super exciting.
We got to get going on it. We also support Aurora Nights, a celebration of local food, music, and community created in partnership with Prairie Sky Breads. It's a beautiful example of how art, culture, and local collaboration can come together to create a community experience that lasts.
And we also manage the Carnegie Center, a space that's both historically significant and actively used by the community. We oversee daily operations, keep the building welcoming and functional, and manage all event rentals, from weddings and meetings to community and arts events. Preservation is also a key role that we do. We care for the building's historic integrity and look forward to the years to come. In the past year alone, the Carnegie has hosted over 100 private rentals and public events, and 20% of that rental revenue is returned to the city each month. We've partnered with the NDSU Master Gardens to create a pollinator garden in the front, and that makes the grounds just as welcoming in the front as it is inside.
MACA has grown not just in programming, but in how deeply we're serving the community. With that growth comes the need for support. Our FY25 budget reflects that 48% of our budget goes for staffing and administration, 24% went directly to artist support, and the rest to operations, maintenance, and outreach. We're also returning 20% of the Carnegie revenue to the city and managing the space without billing for staff or time. Here's a look at the FY24 breakdown. Slide, there we go. So 37.5% of our funds went to local arts organizations, including the Minot Symphony and Orchestra. That's of the money that is given to us by the city. And 20% of the Carnegie rental revenue is returned to the city each month. Your continued support helps ensure this momentum continues, keeping the arts thriving and accessible in Minot.
So MAC is just more than our organization. It's a growing community movement. When you support the arts, you're investing in youth, creative energy, and in a stronger, more connected Minot. Whether it's funding, advocacy, volunteering, or simply showing up, your support matters. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to what's ahead.
And speaking of what's ahead, our Arts in the City series is already underway. Okay. And
yeah, and if you go one more. So these free events are happening all summer long. They just started. We had our first one on Sunday, and it was great. Despite the smoke, we had to cancel the beginning because the Heritage Singers have potential breathing difficulties. But we did get to do our second one. But these are a great way to just experience Minot all summer long. They're free. We're both downtown and at Oak Park, and our downtown ones we're going to be sometimes by the Blue Rider, and we're going to be on Main Street, and when the Citizens Alley opens, we'll be in Citizens Alley. Thank you guys so much. Do you guys have any questions for us? We'll also be doing a budget presentation after this.
we're doing double duty today.
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. So now we'll move on to the community contribution presentations. And up first is Minot Commission on Aging. Welcome, Roger.
Hello, hello. Mayor, members of the council, my name's Roger Reich. I'm the Executive Director for Minot Commission on Aging. As you see, there's no place like home, and we believe that in our organization more so than ever. We try to keep people in their homes, the elderly, the seniors. We've been doing it for over 50-some years with our Meals on Wheels program, our congregate meals, our health maintenance and foot care clinics that we provide to seniors, our activities that we provide in our building. And I'm going to see if I can press this and hopefully.
You might have to aim it at.
Oh, there you go. There's some of our volunteers and our cooks and volunteers delivering meals to one of our houses that we deliver to every day. And these meals are important. Today's count for meals was 390 went out the door, and we probably served another 100 to 110 in the building. And then we also had exercise classes and foot care going on in the building. So here's some volunteers going out, and these are community members. These are service groups. They're employees from different organizations that come in and do this on a day-to-day basis. The lady in the middle is one of our board members, as a matter of fact, and she's been doing Meals on Wheels for probably about 14 years now. And you can't find a better volunteer than that. I know a couple of weeks ago we had some of councilmen, and I know the mayor went with us and Harold went with us on meal routes. I think it's an eye-opening experience for people of where we deliver to, the volunteers delivering, the contacts that we make. It's more than a meal going out there. It's also that personal contact. I know Mark and Harold and I got to a house and the gentleman wasn't home. We made contact and we found out that he was in the hospital, but that's the kind of things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's important because if we hadn't made contact with an emergency, we would have put something in place to find out what happened to him, and if he needed assistance or whatever it was, we would have been there to help out. And I think that's an important part of that everyday, day-to-day thing that we do, helping people stay in their homes and be healthy. And these are some of our educational programs that we're doing. We partner with Minot Library, North Dakota Extension Services that come in and do classes on everything from cooking a meal for one to stepping on classes, which help people stay safe in their homes by teaching them how to get around, maybe removing some of those items, making their bathrooms more safe, using that cane that maybe they don't want to use yet because they don't think that they need it yet, but they do. And then also on the right side there, or my right side, is a picture of an exercise class. Those people come in three times a week and exercise in chairs like that, and build their strength and help them, maintain their mobility, enjoy the socialization of those people in the class. Then they've either came in and had breakfast with us, or they're staying for lunch. So we get them a wide range of things going on, and it's just so inviting, our building, and the seniors that come in there and take advantage of the services that we do. This is our foot care clinic, our health maintenance. These are nurses that work for us. They do clinics there at the Parker Center, or we do have some home visits for those that can't get out of their homes. We do have nurses that go and do home visits, but we see Close to probably 12 to 16 clients a day that come through our foot clinics every day. And so it's very important. It's keeps them mobile. They build that relationship with those nurses. They trust those nurses, and those nurses help them make referrals if need be for things that are part of their health issues. They keep track of their medications, make sure they look. Lots of times these people are coming in once a month or once every other month, and so those nurses get to know their habits, get to know how they react. And so if they see something not right, they can usually detect that and then help that person out, whether that's to get them an appointment with their provider or whatever that is. So we do that on a day-to-day basis too. And I think that should be the end of my slides. As you've seen in our request, we kept it at last year's rate. We're working hard to keep our costs down. We're trying very hard to do everything that we can, and I think that we can make it with the requests that we made from last year. And I'm open to any questions that you have.
Any questions for Roger? Alderman Blessing.
Yeah, and Roger, actually, maybe not a question, but just something I'd like you to kind of point out. Through our discussions on the board, there was some question about what federal funding was doing, what state funding was doing. Can you just give us a short answer to that on what that ended up looking like?
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, everything looks good right now. All of you know what the legislative session was like this year. It was kind of different, but it looks like our federal funding is safe and secure. Our state funding is secure. Again, with the help of the city council, and we got a couple good-sized grants this year too, so that helps. And I think we've done well with our cost. We try to keep our costs down, and we've kept our costs lower than the state average. The state average for a meal is about $12.95, and we've kept ours at $12.05. So we've saved some money there, and so I feel very secure in our state and federal funding at this point.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Next up, First District Health Unit.
I think I have some slides. Okay. Oh. Mayor, City Council members, I'm Holly Breckus. I'm the Executive Director at First District Health Unit. And I want to just remind the Council of our mission. It's to make a positive impact on the health and welfare of the community through service, education, prevention, and collaborative activities. And our vision statement is healthy people and healthy communities. This is just kind of a busy slide, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what is public health. I know there's some new council members. So looking at the foundational areas of public health, the 5 areas that we really focus on is communicable disease control, chronic disease and injury prevention, environmental public health, maternal, child and family health, and then access to linkage to care. So those are the 5 foundational areas. I'll circle back a little bit with the foundational capabilities. So the North Dakota Century Code, and I think I've stated this before, that it requires all land in North Dakota to be part of a public health unit. And the Century Code also lays out these foundational areas. They actually refer to them as the core functions. So the state says you have to have public health, and these are the 5 things that they have to do. And I'll just touch on all of them briefly. Communicable disease control. So we work on preventing and controlling communicable diseases like tuberculosis, hepatitis, foodborne illness. I'll talk a little bit about foodborne illnesses when we get to the environmental health part, but it requires us to have some kind of community-based programs to provide prevention and services. So I'll take tuberculosis, for example. We have a program at First District where we test people, we treat people, Sometimes people think, well, we don't really have tuberculosis anymore, but that is untrue. We deal with tuberculosis cases pretty frequently, whether it's active or latent. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about communicable diseases. This has been in the news quite a lot. If I can get my slide to go. Oh, measles. Measles. So, knock on wood, we're fortunate we don't have any measles in Minot at this time, but we did get our first case of measles up in Burke County. That's one of the counties that we serve. So, we've been working diligently for probably a month or maybe longer on planning for measles. We serve as a resource for the public. We get tons of phone calls about what to do about measles. Should I be concerned about measles? We've worked with schools and child care facilities working on what to do if they get a measles case. And we also work closely with Trinity Health to monitor things like vaccine levels and protocols. We want to have the same message, like don't come in, call your provider, those kind of things. So those are the kind of some examples of what we do in the realm of public communicable diseases. Another area that we work a lot on is chronic disease and injury prevention. So things like reducing the burden of chronic disease through policies, system, environmental changes, prevention screenings, and education. Here's some examples. So we have a child passenger safety program, and I have to give a shout out to Inspiritus Community Health Foundation. They're one of our partners. They provide us some funding to run our child passenger safety program. We had got some money to train staff, and they also provide us money to give free car seats to infants through their funding. And I can see in the slide in the background, there's a fire truck. So we partner with Trinity and the Minot Fire Department to do car seat checks twice a month. They let us use the fire department so we don't have to do it inside or do it outside in the elements. Here's another example of kind of promoting wellness is we take part in the Walk Minot. This is a picture of our Deputy Health Officer, Dr. Don Mattern, and some of our staff participating in the Walk Minot program. Here's something, Public Health Week was in April. We went and we partnered with Minot Public Schools, the CLC program, and we went in and we gave education to students about healthy nutrition. They got to plant some beans, and we also provided information about our mental health platform, Credible Minds, and I know I've talked to you guys before about Credible Minds. So that's just a little sampling of what we do in terms of injury prevention. I'm going to circle back to environmental health. This is probably something most people are a little bit familiar with. We inspect restaurants, we license restaurants, and this is where foodborne illness comes into place. We make sure that the staff in these restaurants know good food handling, things like that, because we don't want our community members to come down with some environmental foodborne illness. And I have a video in here. I don't know if we can get the video. Oh, there's no sound. Well, maybe we can skip that part. I thought who better than to talk about environmental health than one of our environmental health practitioners, but we can just move on to the next slide. Maybe. Okay, so our AHP, just some examples of some of the things they do for the community is not only did they go and do restaurant inspections and tattoo parlors and things like that, they also are out working in these big community events like the big one, the State Fair, and Norse Husfest to make sure that the food vendors are using safe food handling practices. Maternal and child health, family health. We do a lot of programming with youth. We do things like OPOP program, which is Optimum Pregnancy Output Program. So we're helping make sure that women have the opportunity to come in and get education on having a healthy pregnancy. We do some screenings and things like that. One of the big programs that fall under our maternal child health program is we have the WIC program, which is Women, Infant, and Children, and we house that program at First District, and we also partner with the Minot Air Force Base. We have a full-time staff out at the Minot Air Force Base, and in that program we see over 300 families out on the Air Force Base. And then the last foundational area is the access to clinical care. So we really partner with healthcare systems too. We do a lot of referrals. Today we met with Trinity Health talking about oral health. There's a huge need for dentists in our community. There's a shortage. So we were kind of partnering on how we can work on improving dental health in our community. This is just another example of some of the screenings that we did during Public Health Week. We went to one of the towers and met with the residents and provided health screenings in celebration of Public Health Week. Here's just kind of a list. I talked about Credible Minds. We do offer limited healthcare services at our facility. That's not our primary role. We're kind of a gap filler. We help with immunizations and some of the services that maybe people can't afford to go other places. So we do all of those things. Circling back to the foundational services and the foundational capabilities. So we work on things like surveillance and assessment of diseases. We focus on building community partnerships, policy development, emergency response, and communications. Communications is a big one. We do a lot of public education and information around public health issues. Again, this is just a list of the foundational capabilities. I won't go into too much of those. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the history. First District started out as the City of Minot Health Department way back in 1892. And in 1941, the City of Minot decided to partner with Ward County, and so they formed the Ward Minot Health District. In 1943, the legislation passed a law that said counties could combine. So this is when we had Burke County join, McLean, all our counties kind of came together, and we were the first counties that formed a health unit, so hence the name First District Health Unit. Here's a kind of a picture of what public health looks like in North Dakota. You can see the western half of the state. We have a lot of multi-unit, multi-county health districts, kind of a cost-saving measure there. And I have another video that where I won't even attempt to do that one. So I think that's all my slides. I just wanted to kind of close with the thought of, so much of what we do in public health is unseen. It's really hard to put a number on how many people did not get a foodborne illness or how many people did not get injured in a car accident because they were using safety measures or education that they got from public health. So with that, I will stand for any questions that you guys have.
In a world without public health, there are no smoke-free restaurants. Your favorite recreation areas are no longer safe, and health standards are unheard of. Sounds scary? That's why today we work tirelessly so you can enjoy a safer, healthier world. We are North Dakota Public Health, working to build healthy communities. Learn more by getting in touch with your local public health office today.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
Questions from the council? I see none. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I tried to be quick.
Okay. Next, number 3 is MAC EDC.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Brecca Kramer. I'm the President and CEO of the Minot Area Chamber EDC. Thank you for the opportunity to present our 2026 contract for economic development, workforce development, and military support. I'll quickly start. Let's see if I can get this to work. Next slide, please. It is our mission to advocate for and invest in business activity by being a collaborative partner in the community focused on improving quality of life for all. I want to also cover our vision, which is to be the go-to agency for our business community to drive key initiatives that build and strengthen our economy. When we look at our organization, I do want to give a nod to our board of directors. Our board of directors really represent key sectors from education to healthcare, primary oil and gas companies. Obviously, with our contract with the city, we do have the City of Minot mayor sits on our board of directors. We also receive funding from the Ward County and have Commissioner Jason Olson who serves on there as well. The rest are termed board terms there. Our board chair this year is Ryan Ackerman. Our chair-elect is Jared Lundeen. Our treasurer is Missy Feist-Erickson, and our past chair is Cassidy Jumstead. You can see the rest of the members there. I also want to give a shout out to our team. With the initiatives we work, we do have a small team that supports all of these 5 of our strategic key pillars. You can see the listing there. Typically the faces that you see from our organization, your contract directly supports the Economic Development Specialist position, which is Mark Lyman, and also workforce development in our military liaison, which was something the City of Minot contracted with us a few years ago and added to our contract, and we've been continuing those services and brought on a full-time individual. 6 of our 8 team members, or 9 team members from the Chamber EDC side actually support the pillars and contract with the City of Minot. We also, some of you are probably aware, we have a contract with the North Dakota Department of Transportation and have the title work for DOT, and the location at Arrowhead is ours as well. When I get into, we are often in front of you, we talk about our 5 key pillars. The City of Minot specifically supports our economic development, our workforce development, and military pillars. The community development pillar is really a partnership, and the administrative costs for our team to be a part of that are absorbed within the overall budget that we have for the organization. And I just want to call out, I was in front of you guys at the end of January, and I know we're getting late into the evening. I think we presented a end-of-year contract report, which was about 40-minute presentation, and I think almost 50 pages of support for the work we do. So tonight I'll try to be brief, and I am more than happy to answer questions, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know Michaela had asked us to try to keep this to 5 minutes, so I'm trying to stay within that parameter. We did, with our application and request, provide the actual funding request, our budget presentation, our year-to-date budget for 2025. You can see what that looks like, and we're in the process of finalizing 2026. Our request, though, we have mapped out what our 2026 budget request is. You'll see additional supporting documents, which includes our full strategic plan, our key initiatives, and then also some of the members and volunteers that serve and support each of the pillars that are contracted. We are contracted with the City of Minot for. Our budget request for 2026 is level funding for economic development and workforce development. We have not sought out additional funds, even though we continue to do more in these spaces. This is level funding with our 2024 contract and 2025. We have not increased that. We have looked for other ways to bring in revenue through programming, sponsors, support, and have kept that with a level request. Our Minot Air Force Base retention efforts, or as the state is calling it, base enhancement grants, and focus there specifically goes to support Task Force 21. And as you guys know, Task Force 21 is our our education side, which is really focused on education, advocacy. We do things like host a nuclear triad symposium in Washington, D.C. We host one here in North Dakota. And I would say one of the bigger things that we're working is we've stood up our Sentinel Working Group, which is under task force. And as you guys know, for the next decade or more, we're going to be all in and working in partnership with the city and numerous partners as we prepare for this major modernization project. We are asking for a slight increase here of 3.5% based on our funding for military support. We do receive state of North Dakota funds and also City of Minot that supports this, but we do raise funds privately. We have sponsors that support our symposium, but we've certainly stepped up our efforts here, and that is a slight increase from the $106,250 that we received last year. With that, I'll maybe just cover our other funding sources for each of these pillars that are supported through the City of Minot contract. With economic development, I've already mentioned that Ward County supports our efforts. We have the logistics park in North Dakota, and there's development, the funds that are coming in there. Our intermodal operator lease does generate some funds that we bring back to the organization to help with economic development. We have privately raised funds, sponsors, and program fees for things like, for example, our Startup Minot Entrepreneurial Academy that we offer through the Chamber EDC. Again, trying to diversify everywhere that we can and be fiscally responsible and continue to expand out our economic development efforts. Workforce development has really been funded in majority through the state of North Dakota and city of Minot. Most of the programming that we do there, we don't have, we're not charging for those services because we really feel it's our due diligence to do everything we can to support workforce and childcare, which I know Alderwoman Olson chairs that committee, and we work very closely with the city on that. And I already covered with military. It's not only the city of Minot, the state of North Dakota, but privately raised funds, our symposium sponsors, and then all the other things that we do for military support, the Prairie Warrior Auction, all of that, it really kind of falls on the programming side. That falls under our member investor services, which is really our chamber arm of the organization. With that, I'm gonna pause there and I'll stand for any questions, and we're more than happy to go any further, but like I said, for sake of time, I figured you guys had just heard me at the end of January for 40 minutes, so I thought I'd keep it a little briefer tonight.
Alderman Blessing.
One short one, Brecca. So in the 23 session, there was base retention grants that came through. What was the result of the 25 session?
The 25 session, there was $1 million appropriation for, Governor Armstrong called it the Base Enhancement Grant Program. 600,000 of that will go to Minot. 250 goes to Grand Forks and 150,000 goes to Fargo. So that's how that $1 million appropriations broke out. We stepped it back a little bit, Mayor and Alderman Blessem, intentionally. We had some funds that were carrying over from the 2023 session. And the reason being is there was a specific allocation with the original in 2023. We received $850,000 for our military support, the task force side. If you guys recall last year, the Sentinel program was under a congressional breach. January 18th, Congress halted the project for a deep dive review of the program and to determine if they were going to continue with the Sentinel program. In July 8th of just this last year, 24, Congress said that it's critically important for protecting the nation and that this program of record is going to move forward. Because we had a pause of strategic engagements and planning that we originally had planned, some of those funds that we would have expended in Sentinel planning and preparation were really halted last year. So we took those and made a request to the state. So we lowered our request for funding from the state of North Dakota this biennium. And maybe just to add, the amount of work that we're doing there is increasing. But again, we being fiscally responsible, we're going to use the dollars that were specifically allocated for Sentinel first and lowered our request from the state to actual dollars that we needed.
Any other questions for Brecca? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we're back to MACA. You guys get 2 bites at the apple tonight.
We're back.
Normally when we do presentations, he brings his guitar and we sing a song or two together.
Yeah, maybe
so
we'll do that next time.
I try to convince him to do it here, but
We thought about turning everything into a song, like we'll just sing our presentation.
add a little fun to these.
We'll look forward to that.
That's the one we just did. Should be one more slideshow there.
If not, we can just go.
Yeah.
I'm looking. Okay, let me see.
Oh, we're good. So we'll just, good afternoon again.
We'll talk.
Yep, I'm Tanya Vitko, and this is Miles Barcom, and we're the co-executive directors of Minot Area Council of the Arts, and our mission is simple. We connect our community through the arts, and we offer free programming that brings people together, celebrates creativity, and enhances the quality of life for both residents and visitors.
We have presented 35 free public events and created paid opportunities for local artists and musicians. And we've partnered with schools, youth groups, and nonprofits to expand access to the arts. We've brought life and energy to Oak Park, downtown spaces, and classrooms through live music, visual art, and cultural programming. Our work reaches people of all ages and backgrounds, and it builds pride, connection, and joy across generations.
And this work matters because the arts do more than inspire. The arts fuel the economic vibrancy, support mental well-being, youth development, and they make Minot more attractive to families, professionals, and visitors. And most of all, they create shared experiences that strengthen connection and build community.
As we prepare for the 2025 season, well, we're in it now for Arts in the City. We're navigating rising program delivery costs across nearly every area, including event insurance, permitting, and safety coordination, infrastructure rentals, and outreach. At the same time, public demand is growing, and so are our responsibilities, from youth engagement and public art to increased participation from partner groups and higher public demand for free, high-quality arts experiences. We're being asked to do more with the same resources.
And we've responded by streamlining our operations, expanding our volunteer base, and sourcing additional grants and sponsorships. But to meet the growing demand without reducing access or quality, we rely on the continued support from the city. And this support allows us not to just maintain momentum, but to meet growing needs with the quality, inclusion, and professionalism our city deserves.
In FY24, which was the last year we have full data for, 37.5% of the city's MACA funding went directly to 2 local arts organizations. $12,000 went to the Minot City Band, now beginning its 104th or 105th season of free summer concerts, and $3,000 to the Minot Symphony Orchestra, which is coming up on its 100th year, supporting outreach and education. The remainder supports MACA operations, including public programs, office space, artist fees, and administration that make year-round impact possible.
And we're respectfully requesting the same amount that we were awarded last year. And this funding helps us to pay local and regional artists, maintain event infrastructure in the Carnegie Center, reach new audiences through outreach, partnering with schools to support youth engagement, and keeping the public programming free and accessible for all Minot residents.
That same support helps sustain beloved institutions like the Minot City Band and the Minot Symphony Orchestra while strengthening the creative ecosystem that surrounds them.
When you invest in the arts, you invest in Minot's identity, economy, and future. These programs energize our public spaces, nurture local talent, and provide creative experiences that strengthen mental health, civic engagement, and community pride.
We're proud of what we built with your support, and with your continued investment, we're ready to take that impact even further. Thank you for your time, your trust, and your belief in what the arts make possible here in Minot. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And now, last but certainly not least, Service Basin Planning Commission.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I asked Roger why he's always first, and I always tend to be last, so I will try to be brief, knowing that it's really late. But I've been in front of you before, specifically for requesting funding for our Business Accelerator Fund program. And so today I just want to focus more on the intent of the request for today of the $20,000, which is the same amount as last year. My name is Briselda, and I serve as the Executive Director for Service Basin Planning Council. Service Basin Planning Council is a designated economic development district as defined by the Economic Development Administration. We were created under the North Dakota Century Code, so we exist by law, and our formation is essentially dictated by the North Dakota Century Code. Our main purpose is to promote economic and community development in our 7-county area. And so in front of you, you'll see the map of the communities that we cover. And our requests, our annual request, is primarily to support one of our key services that we provide throughout the region, which is supporting our small businesses throughout the 7-county area. And so for today, I just really want to focus on that request and our 2024 impact. So in front of you, you will see, I think, the next slide. Last year, we talked about our 5-year impact, and in front of you, you'll see our 6-year impact in supporting our small businesses. I want to note that the funding that is requested is used for the operating and personnel expenses associated with our program. All of our previous requests, specifically for a Business Accelerator Fund program, is strictly used for lending. And so that is intended to revolve. The $20,000 request is the operating expenses associated for administering that program, along with 2 other programs that we have administered for over 30 years. And so I'm happy to answer any questions specifically to that, but I just wanted to give a big shout out to one of the first businesses that I've had the privilege of working with since I started with Service Basin Planning Council 10 years ago. And the shout out is to Christine Staley, who celebrated 10 years of starting her business, Magic City Hoagies. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend visiting that small business in downtown Minot. But she celebrated her 10-year anniversary last year. It was actually one of the recipients for our revolving loan fund that we've administered for over 30 years. So with that, I'm open to any questions that you may have for me.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Any questions for Service Basin Planning?
Thank you.
I see none. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes our presentation and takes us to item 8.3, which is Stormwater Program and Fee Overview.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm going to condense this a little bit. Been a long night here listening to all these good folks speak. So tonight we're going to talk a little about our stormwater program and the fees that we collect and what that program does for the city of Minot. We'll go over the history of the ordinance and the fee development, the purpose of our stormwater utility, overview of the stormwater infrastructure that the city has, how we calculate our fees, some comparisons to other communities in our region, some of the benefits of a unit-based fee structure, and some upcoming improvements and updates that we want to make. There's a little over 50 years of history here on this slide. I'm going to try to condense that. In 1974, the city authored its first Minot area storm drainage system, which was a look at how we expand our trunk infrastructure into the developing areas of Minot. In the very beginning, it was just get it to the river as fast as you can. But as we got farther away from the river, we started developing the hills. The city had to look towards how do we manage the runoff that's associated with development. So the Stanley Plan, as it's commonly referred to, was our first study at looking at that. The study recommended that the city install a series of detention ponds as part of development, and then also to establish runoff regulations. They're very similar to what we enforce today. Then in '78, we had another drainage study about how we develop stormwater infrastructure in northwest Minot. Coincidentally, it wasn't until 2014 where those improvements were actually constructed, just because of some of the delays in the development of that area. In about 1984, the city commissioned a study from its own engineering department to look at addressing some community concerns regarding development impacts on stormwater throughout the community, and then concerns with the cost of special assessments for extending those trunk utilities into new growth areas. Council approved this report and then commissioned a study, or excuse me, an advisory committee of citizens to help look at ways to finance a potential utility and how some of these issues should be addressed. And it also mailed out a survey to over 1,000 residents asking for their input and what their feelings were towards certain questions on that survey. This was really the first discussions of a stormwater utility in the city of Minot. So the utility as we see it today kind of had its legs in this study, and then it evolved from there. Then we fast forward to the 90s, and we start talking about the impacts of the Clean Water Act. So the Federal Water Pollution Control Act was enacted in '74, which really dealt with wastewater and stormwater runoff, but it wasn't until the 90s when cities like Minot had to start complying with certain regulations. And in 1999, that's when the phase 2 of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System was implemented, which then required us to basically permit all of the infrastructure development associated with developments and construction activity. So you can see here is when we really started to have to tie down regulations to city growth. Because we're obligated to follow that federal law, we have to abide by what's called an MS4, which is a Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program. Long acronym, but essentially what it says is, Minot, you have to regulate your stormwater discharges to the river by having a series of best management practices and runoff controls, and if you don't, then the federal government through the state will then restrict our ability to discharge stormwaters to the river. So with that, obviously, comes a lot of compliance documentation that we have to put together. Our department does that on behalf of the city. And with this federal law and then the MS4 permitting that happened in '99, that's really where we had to form the basis of our stormwater management program. You get into the 90s, in about 97, that's as far back as our records would go. That's when the city implemented, or somewhere around there, the maintenance fee that we charge on utility bills to pay for the maintenance of storm sewers. And then in 1999 is when the development fee was established to help pay for extending trunk infrastructure systems into impaired watersheds. So we've had these fees in place now for at least 26 years, and that's what helps pay for some of our program here. Through the early 2000s, we developed the ordinance requirements, our design standards manual to make sure that all developments are regulated fairly and evenly across the program. All of our infrastructure is designed in the same regard so that it's all sized and located appropriately. 2004, then we codified our stormwater management design requirements, and that's basically what you see today. Now, since 2004, all major development has to have a stormwater management plan. Before that time, it was a little bit ad hoc. I think staff looked at it because they didn't have the regulations in place. And if you're a major stormwater generator, you're required to have a plan. If you're a smaller site, you probably didn't have to have one. Now everyone's treated the same. In 13 and 15, we revised our stormwater ordinances and our design standards manual, essentially bringing them up to modern standards from where they were in 2004. That's also when we implemented the community rating system, which provides a premium and flood insurance premium discount for those that are in the floodplain. So at this time, we're able to achieve about a 20% reduction in flood insurance premiums. And then lastly, when the new ordinances went in place in 2015, we identified watersheds that were impaired. A lot of them were historical ones that we brought forward, and then we identified a couple new ones. And then we eliminated the Storm Sewer Ad Hoc Committee, which used to be comprised of city staff and council members, and they would help us rank projects and put those in the capital improvement plan. That committee was eliminated, and council said, staff, just take care of it, put it in the CIP, and then we'll make the final decision when we approve that document and the budget. And so that's what we've done. So that was 50 years of history and hopefully only a few minutes. So why do we have this utility fee? It provides dedicated funding for the storm sewer system. So all of the maintenance and development and flood control maintenance that happens has to be funded somehow. The storm sewer is an enterprise. So whatever the budget is at the end, through the budget cycle, then we have to adjust those fees to basically net that to zero. It pays for the compliance reporting that we have to do. It pays for a staff member in my department, our stormwater program manager, handles all the compliance reporting, all the stormwater management plan reviews, and then manages our community rating system. So that is funded through the utility. It helps ensure compliance with MS4 and other environmental regulations that we're required to follow. Helps reduce flooding and manage runoff. The method that we use right now is a pre versus post development. So I think I've explained that before, where if you had say a 4-acre commercial site and it generated 5 cubic feet per second of runoff, when it's fully developed, it still has to generate 5 cubic feet per second of runoff. And so we have these standards in place to not only protect the city from potential litigation concerns, but also to make sure that as the city grows and develops, the overall volume of stormwater discharge from the city may increase, but the flow rate, we want that to stay the same. People are counting on us to make sure that as the city develops, we don't inadvertently put them in a floodplain because we're increasing stormwater runoff. This is all mandated by ordinance. So in our current ordinance that we have in 31-152, it describes how the fees are calculated. And then through the budget process, you establish a resolution that establishes the rates. And then that fee is applied to all occupied properties and then goes on the monthly bills. So what makes up a storm sewer system? The common misconception that we get from the public is, hey, there's not a catch basin anywhere near me, so why am I paying for this? But what we have to explain to people is just because you don't have a catch basin near you, your runoff from your property still goes somewhere. It doesn't just stop at your property line. And so the system's made up of underground pipes and catch basins, open ditches and channels, and also retention and detention ponds that help regulate that water. And these all have to work together to manage that stormwater. You can't have one without the other. The fees that we collect also support the long-term system reliability. So our folks have to go out there and maintain that system and make sure it works so that when it does rain, we don't have massive backups or flooding damage because of that. Expansion where necessary, and our regulatory compliance that we have to mandate. So how are our fees calculated? In Minot, we have a hybrid system. They're based on your property type and size. There's 3 components. There's the maintenance fee, which pays for storm sewer maintenance, the development, which is our 50% cost share on assessment districts, or in some projects, 100% payment of projects, and then the flood maintenance fee. Per ordinance, government entities and vacant land is exempt. So if you look at how this structure works, if you're a single family lot, whether you're an 1/8 acre lot or a 5 acre lot, you pay 1 unit. If you're a multifamily, you're 1 unit plus half a unit for each dwelling unit on your property. And then non-residential is our commercial and industrial property, and we charge 1 unit per 7,000 square feet of impervious surface. And then you can see how the flood units are calculated there on the side. So in an example, basically this is just a big math problem, right? So you take in Walmart's case, we took Walmart, it's 100% impervious is how it's calculated. We take their area divided by 7,000, you get 133 units. You multiply that by the maintenance fee that's established by resolution, you get $928 and change a month. You do the same math for the development fee, you add on their flood maintenance fee, and you get $1,669 per month. So how do we compare to other cities?
We use a very similar system to most communities in the state and actually in our region, and actually probably nationally too. If you look at even a wider view, you can see that many cities charge a separate fee for single-family residential and then some sort of a unit-based calculation for their commercial and industrial properties. And then we put some examples there on the side for how, like a 4-acre commercial property would be calculated out in Minot versus Bismarck and Fargo. So I think the takeaway here is most communities use some sort of a unit-based fee. It's easier to administer and explain to the public. Storm sewer design has a lot of variables in it, and so if you start getting away from some of the simplistic methods that most of us use, you start talking about times of concentration or runoff coefficients and something like that, the public is going to be lost. And so the goal is to try to keep it simple. The unit-based method encourages property owners to reduce impervious surfaces wherever possible, which helps overall lower that runoff rate to downstream property owners. Helps align the stormwater costs with the actual system impacts. So I think most people understand a commercial property with parking lots and roofs will generate more stormwater than a single family. And so that's what the unit-based fee is trying to accomplish, is having a difference between those. And then it helps reduce the administrative burden compared to a tiered or complex rate model. So here's a screenshot from how that same Walmart would be calculated in Sioux Falls, where they use a little bit different rate structure. They have a series of land use codes that they apply, and then each individual property would have to be calculated based on what their land use is. So another unit-based approach, it just has a different calculation for it. And then what improvements are we planning here? So we're always looking to try to improve our existing systems. Every day we try to update our GIS with new information that comes available, or for our field crews provide us information or corrections that have to be made. Our storm sewer system is probably the layer that has the most incomplete data. A lot of the old areas of the city, if they had a little drainage problem, they'd put a catch basin and a piece of pipe and they drain it to the river. But we really don't have a lot of data on some of that. And so as those are found and brought to our attention, then we try to add those to our storm sewer map. So that's kind of a continuous process that we're doing. Eventually we want to take our stormwater fee data and then layer that in the utility map. So we have an internal map now that has water and sewer rates on it, and the plan is to hopefully be able to do that same thing with the stormwater utility. And then we want to include estimated stormwater fees in development review team meetings. We rarely get a question on what monthly utility rate bills are, but we want to take a stab at trying to provide that information based on some assumptions. A lot of time at DRT meetings, an applicant might come in and say, hey, I want to develop this commercial piece of property, but they don't know yet the size of the building or the parking lots they may need. That's going to come later through design. But we can make some assumptions and try to give them a rough order magnitude of what their fees might be, just to help them in planning. That's all the information I had for you. My goal was to try to get everyone on the same page with the history of the program and how some of these fees are calculated, and then we can work with you on any requested changes.
Okay. Any questions for Lance? Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Lance, good presentation. Thank you. I think this all started because of the situation that arose a month or two ago that we talked about. So after that discussion, how many properties in and around Minot do we collect storm sewer fees from that aren't actually tied into our storm sewer system? Do we know?
No, I don't know the exact number. Are you asking if they're directly tied into like a pipe or something like that?
Well, I know it's pipes and ditches. I mean, it can be either or, right? But I'm thinking more so along this property that we spoke about, that's over a mile from where the storm sewer system actually stops at the city of Minot. I'm just trying to figure out if we know how many people or how many businesses, houses, whatever it may be, that are in the fringe areas that we're collecting fees from, but they're not actually tied into our system.
I don't know that answer, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller. You know, in my opinion, looking at this, whatever runoff would come off of that property would flow through some city Minot facilities. We have some culverts and a pond nearby. So it wouldn't be zero, but it'd be less than maybe a property in the core of the city or up on a hill.
So I guess just in reference to that property that we're talking about, when the water runs off of there, and I've been out there and looked at it, it flows north and then northeast across Mr. Zablotny's land and then flows towards Surrey.
Correct.
So how is that customer being charged a fee when that water isn't even running back towards our storm sewer system?
Well, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, first, when that water leaves the site, flows northeast, as you state, they have a culvert that drains into 72nd Street ditch. It goes through a culvert under the water tower's driveway, I believe. And then there's a slough, which is actually a detention pond that was put in way back when I think when Halliburton was first developed. And so all the water from that area would go into that slough where it's managed by city staff. And then there's a culvert that flows under 72nd Street and then out to the field and then through Surrey and then out to the system.
Okay. Roughly last year, do you know the total amount of fees we collected in the storm sewer budget? Like what we brought in?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, I do not. So, you know, our department in engineering helps with the fee calculations, but as far as setting the budgets for the storm sewer division, that would fall under them, which is in Public Works.
Okay. And then one other quick question. In your example that you were showing us on the presentation, why is the Minot pricing, what I was looking at, I guess, or just seeing both single family and commercial, why are we 3 times on residential and over double on some of the commercial stuff as far as fees go? Why are ours so much higher than like Fargo or Bismarck?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, the only guess that I could venture in that is maybe a couple things. You know, one, each community is different, right? And how they allocate the fees collected, what infrastructure they have to pay off or how it's maintained. You know, those sort of things we wouldn't know because we're not working on their direct budget. You know, we have some unique things going on in Minot. We have some flood control facilities that are currently run through that utility that maybe some other communities don't. The physical size of Minot is smaller than Bismarck and Fargo, so as the city grows, it's not directly tied to water and sewer. You know, so like if you extend a street, for instance, say the street's 1,000 feet long, you need 1,000 feet of water main and 1,000 feet of sewer main. For storm sewer, you can direct that water to a low point, have some catch basins and maybe an outlet pipe that goes to a coulee or something. So your amount of infrastructure is a lot less for storm sewer than it would be for water and sewer. And so as cities continue to grow and expand, their footprint gets larger. They'll bring in more fees because of like a unit-based calculation that they might have. But their overall infrastructure may not increase in size as much. So I think as Minot gets bigger, and depending on the amount of storm sewer that needs to be installed, you know, our fee would hopefully equalize over time where we're adding more mass to the city, but the fee doesn't have to increase because we're not putting in as much infrastructure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark.
Alderman Blessing.
If I could. Thanks, Lance. Just one other quick question on that part. Is it possible that they're handling a lot of that stuff through specials and taking care of it that way as opposed to putting it in a fee?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessing, yes. And I think we all know, you know, some cities have 100% special assessment. I know in Fargo, the initial stormwater infrastructure is 100% special assess. When they have to replace it, I think they do 50-50 like we do. I'm not 100% sure what Bismarck does.
Yeah, and just a comment based on that, you know, for me, I kind of like the fee approach better because I like people getting a bill where they're paying for something that they're receiving. I think that makes a lot of sense rather than kind of the gray areas of specials. But if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, one other thing that your presentation brought up for me again that brought back some of the property tax discussions is that when we go to calculate stormwater fees, government entities and vacant land are exempt. And so I guess the first question is, do school buildings get a water bill?
Yes, they do, but they are not charged storm sewer to my knowledge because they'd be a government entity.
Okay, so is that in Century Code handled that way, or is that us handling it that way?
I believe that's our ordinance.
Okay, so I guess one of the things for my colleagues, and I'm not saying that we have to change this today, but this starts to raise questions. And one of the reasons this came to my mind during the property tax discussion at the state was that there's a whole thing around that for property tax as well. That, you know, government entities don't exchange dollars through the property tax system for the land they're holding. And for me, this is another place where that's popping up now to say, well, look, they build a brand new school, they put in all these parking lots, they take up a whole bunch of more land and runoff. Now we've got to distribute all of that water that's not being soaked into the land like it's supposed to, and we're distributing it to the people of the city again. Now we're telling everybody, not only do you got to help pay for it through the bond itself, but you're also paying their portion of the stormwater fee. And so, I mean, I understand that maybe some would think that that's counterproductive to charge each other for that stuff, but I would submit that governments holding land is not necessarily a good thing. And it's easier to do that when you don't have any of the carrying costs that a private owner of land would have. And that gets me a little off when I start to think through some of these things. So there may be some discussions there that we should have as we go forward, because I think right now we're making it too easy for governments to say, you know, we'll just hold it. You know, it's probably going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today, so no problem holding that. And also, it would help them make their decisions better, just like any other developer would when they're going to put parking lots and buildings and roofs and all the stuff you talked about, if they're going to have a stormwater fee that's calculated based on that coming out the back end. I mean, it'd be the same thing for us. If we go and look at, say, a new site for a fire department, we should be taking that into account. It's the same thing that every other developer would need to. And so I think there might be some interesting conversations. Now, the vacant one, and this actually is a question, that's not on there. When you say vacant there, are you meaning it's bare grass in terms of vacant? It's not a property that's not in use that's got a building on it, I would assume. If it's for sale, for instance, the fact that it's not in use, they would still be paying their fees if there's a water bill.
Mayor Janser and Alderman Blessum, the way that it's interpreted is if it's bare grass, undeveloped, they don't get charged. If, say, for instance, they have a parcel that has a main building, maybe like I'll throw out an example, maybe like a car dealership where you have a lot that has the main sales building, and then you have maybe an additional lot behind it that's where all your sales inventory is. For the basis of this fee, we would calculate that all as one lot because the ordinance reads your primary building or something in that regard, and then your pertinence thereto. So that would mean any improved surface or impervious surface that you need to have for that property to function. If it's an abandoned building or it's for sale, if they have a utility bill that's coming to them, they'd still be charged for it.
Okay. Anything else for the city engineer? City manager, did you have something?
Not necessarily for Lance, but I did just want to point out that based off this conversation last time, there was a request for us to assess whether or not any other properties or businesses were being charged for any city services that they were not receiving. And I did ask the city auditor to look at that, and there's some documentation in the packet with regards to that and her findings related to that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing else on this, thanks, Lance.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the presentation. That brings us to item 9. Since the storm sewer thing was not an actionable item, brings us to item number 9. Alderman Olson.
Prior to adjournment, I do think that we should address the request that was made during personal appearances related to base camp or base Indian camp? And I would like to bring that vote back for reconsideration.
Okay. That's a motion.
Yes.
Is there a second to it?
Can anyone second it? Or does it have to come from the?
City attorney, is there a Does it matter who seconds it, or is it just the motion maker that has to be in the majority? Or-
Not seeing anything about the second needing to be with the majority.
Okay, I'm looking.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Alderman Pittner. So there's a motion to bring that item back.
And just to clarify, it's just to reconsider reimbursement of the fee, right? It's not issuance of the license.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Any discussion of that motion?
This one, I guess I just want to make sure that I'm remembering the thought processes that we went through that got us through the vote the first time, which was that this wasn't their request. They really didn't have much thought about that part. They just wanted to get up and running and do that. And as I think I said at the time, I'm not here worried about the dollars whatsoever. In fact, as we get to the alcohol ordinance and everything related to it, you'll see that I want them down to zero as fast as we can do it, because I don't think people should need licenses to do business in the city. But where we've been and the way that we've gone about things, this is the process, this is the ordinance. And so if I'm remembering how we got here, that is what it was, and it wasn't their request. And now maybe that's come since, and maybe that's what tonight was a little bit about, but that's my how I remembered it, at least.
I believe I stated at the meeting, and I don't know how much you heard because I was in St. Louis at the time, but they had asked about it at the end of the year before licensing, because they were going to renew, knowing that they didn't have a state license for 2024. I had told them that I would bring it to council. I believe we brought it to council at one point and said, we're just going to visit it once it actually comes to fruition, where they're able to relicense, where they put in a renewal. We'd worked through the whole process with the state. The state's ready to renew them once they get issued a city license. You guys issued a city license last time, and Melissa wanted to bring it back to council, so they have not paid a fee as of yet. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Alderman Pittner.
Can I just ask Michaela, it's been cited often in this scenario. When we say there's a language barrier, are they not equipped to come in and speak in front of council to get the point across? I'm just asking kind of point blank, because we've heard that.
I've spoken with the owner over the phone. I've spoken with the manager. Of the rest, Melissa's been really like a huge help, because she's taken the time to be able to go out there. The state didn't have the time or the means or the people to go out. I'd offered for them to come to the city and help with paperwork. It just never, either their schedules didn't work out or how that ended. But I believe that there's probably a large enough gap where they probably would need some help understanding what was going on.
Alderman Olson.
And I'll say that I voted against it the last time because the request had not been made. But now hearing someone that is in business against them, coming to advocate for them, just to support them in this request, that's really what is changing my mind, because I think that is businesses working together, and that's why I would like to see this offered as a credit, not a refund, but offered as a credit.
We're still discussing just the reconsideration. So
Yeah, so
do we want to call the question?
Yes.
we're just talking about whether we should reconsider this or
Let's
not,
maybe
so.
call the question on the reconsideration.
All right, the question's been called. Cast your vote to reconsider.
The motion to reconsider passed 5-1 with dissents from Alderman Blossom.
Okay, that being the case, we're reconsidering is there a motion? Alderman Pittner.
I'll make the motion to approve the credit for the 2024, what would be the 2024 license fee towards 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded to allow credit for the 2024 fee to 2025. Any discussion? Alderman Pittner.
I think this is exactly what it is. This is being able to move within scenarios that were presented. Again, these are individuals that are trying to do business within our community, give options for our citizens. So I'm going to be in favor of it, like I was.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your vote.
The motion passed 4-2 with dissent from Alderman Blessum and Alderman Samuelson.
Okay, that motion's carried. Anything else? Then we're on to item number 9.
So moved.
Move to adjourn, second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Olson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.